I wanted to get into software.
Can you give us an understanding of what does the Indian automotive industry today look like?
So music has kind of been a very important part of my existence, even during engineering days. So I had a band right from engineering days onwards. In Jamshedpur, I had a band. Engineering I got not because I was like looking forward to do engineering. My stint with Tata Motors, which was the first job, probably was the most amazing experience I've had. In retrospect, I would say whatever happened for the best.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of IIM Ke Baad, the place where you meet multifaceted IIM alumni across generations, across campuses, and across interests and professions. Today, I have a special guest, but before we go on to the guest, I have a simple request. If you're watching this, which I know we've just doubled our subscription base in the last 1 month, I know you're watching, and if you're watching this, and you're an IIM alumni, and you've got an interesting story to tell us, please feel free to reach out. Our email ID is iimkebaad@gmail.com, and we'll put it in the captions at the bottom. So reach out to us. There is no harm, but if you want to be on the channel, let us know. All we ask you is to give us your LinkedIn profile and a 2-line summary. Just a 2-line, not a cover letter, not a CV, just a 2-line summary on why you think you will make an interesting guest. With that out of the way, let's move on to probably one of our most interesting guests that we've had. And why do I say that? We have Dev. So welcome, Dev. Welcome to our channel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
I'm on a busy Sunday afternoon. Dev is interesting for us and hopefully for all of you because of so many reasons, but I'll just count the top 2 or 3. Number 1, he's had more than a 3-decade career after IIM and a few years before that also. Dev will talk more about that, but I'll give you a brief snapshot. He started his career in the automotive industry. When I say automotive industry, it's not like just another company of that time. Where has he worked? He's worked at pretty much every automotive giant you can name. He's worked at Tata, Eicher, he's worked at, and you name it, and he's done it. Then he moved to tech. In tech, I believe, but they will tell us a bit more. I believe he was a bit more automotive focused because of his background. But let's see. I also want to hear a bit more. But even in tech, who has they worked for? He's worked for Tech Mahindra, previously Satyam. He's worked for Wipro. He's worked for Capgemini and a lot of others. But why do I call him interesting? There are a lot of you viewers from IIMs and other MBAs and even non-MBAs who've done a lot in their career. But Dev, I call a truly multifaceted personality. Firstly, because for the last 35 years, he's been pursuing, in all seriousness, a musical passion. So he's not just a musician, he's a singer, songwriter, and producer of songs. Dev, I would love to hear more about that. I'm sure a lot of our viewers would be interested in pursuing your hobby, not just as a hobby, but as now a profession. I won't say any more than that. Why is it a profession? But Dev, I would love to hear more from you about your career, what your current career, which I haven't hinted to our viewers just yet, what you're doing. Or shall I hint? No, I won't. I'll keep that as a mystery for later because Dev is into the most interesting career phase of his life right now, along with being about to cut his first, he's already cut his first single, about to release his first single. He'll probably release it before we release this episode. So it'll be out in the markets and we'll put a link down below. Over to you, Dev. Welcome to the channel once again.
Thanks a lot.
Tell us. Let's start with Dev. Let's start with your early career because a lot of people have gone. But you went to IIM, if I'm not mistaken, in the late 80s or early 90s. Back when IIM, at least in my impression, wasn't that popular. It wasn't as big as it is right now.
That's true. So first of all, thanks a lot for having me. I think it's a great honor to be invited to this program, which I'm really amazed and impressed with what you're doing and the kind of stories that you're able to share through this platform. And it's very interesting for so many of us, just to peep into the lives of so many amazing ex-IIM alumni and just see how life unfolds for many of us over the years. So thanks a lot. And just to give you a little bit of brief about my background. So I'm currently based out of London, but I'm originally a small town boy. So I grew up in a small town in Bihar and in Bengal. So I was basically did my schooling in the mining town of Dhanbad and Asansol. And so I was not really exposed to the big cities. And so coming from there, and today I've been in London for the last 14 years, and I've been in Europe for the last 20 years. I mean, it's a journey, and I'm very, very grateful for where I am today. And a lot of it obviously gets attributed to the education that one gets or have been fortunate to get during our early years. So coming from a small town, so I did my schooling primarily from Bihar and Bengal, which is, I would say I've had the most fond memories of my life actually comes from those days. And it used to be obviously a very digital, a very, very different world, which was a non-digital world where you would actually play out in the sun. You will be, not really stuck to your phones or to your computers all the time. So it was a different kind of a childhood. And from there, I was lucky enough to get into engineering. So I did my mechanical engineering from NIT Bhopal. Those days it was called Maulana Azad College of Technology. And from the campus, then I got an opportunity to start my career with Tata Motors, Tata Engineering those days. And I became a graduate engineer trainee at Jamshedpur, which was, again, that kind of influenced me to such an extent that I spent my whole rest of my life associated with automotive. I have really enjoyed my journey. I guess I have probably been a little bit stupid at times for not letting go of manufacturing, which is probably not the most happening of fields in the world today. But I have enjoyed what I have done. And thanks to, the kind of foundation I got from some of
Dev, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Before Tata Motors, you did your engineering. Despite living in Dhanbad, you didn't go to ISM Dhanbad, which I believe is an IIT now.
That's right. It is an IIT.
Was that a conscious decision to not be in your hometown, or was there something else behind that?
Not really. So it's a very funny story that so I actually wanted to become a doctor. And I was influenced by my eldest sister, who was a doctor. And I kind of always studied to prepare for medicine and to become a doctor. But funnily enough, when the medical entrance tests were happening, my admit card didn't come by post. So can you imagine the irony of the whole thing? So it was all strange circumstances which kind of pushed me to get into engineering. And engineering I got not because I was like looking forward to do engineering. I had the highest marks in mathematics, which was my sixth subject, which was actually not my subject of choice, but I took it because it was helping me in physics. And it so happened that I had the highest marks in maths, and that automatically got me admission in Pilani, got me admission in NIT. Those days, they used to take on merit. So as a default, because I couldn't appear in the medical entrance test because my admit card didn't show up, I ended up becoming an engineer, which was very, very unusual,
Your admit card didn't show up in medical. Was it just the one exam you were giving?
No,
I have never done it.
Yeah,
or is it just the one exam that you give?
So I just applied in 3 places. So I applied in AFMC, which I got through. But then in AFMC, they kind of held me back because of medical. The day of appeal for the medical in AFMC actually coincided with my interview for the engineering, which was an assured seat. So I had to take a choice on that same day, whether should I go for an assured career in engineering or should I appeal for medicine and take a chance? So it was like then, it is called quirk of fate, right? So I kind of said, let's go for something which is in hand rather than, try for something. And funnily enough,
I can understand that's such a rational decision because things like medical, whatever you appeal on, it will be a black box. They're not going to necessarily, unless it's been like a complete error. They'll be like, you didn't pass, dude. I mean,
Exactly.
go home.
And
And
because
this
it
is
was
armed forces.
exactly, this was armed forces,
Their
right?
medical
So
standards are very high, very high.
very. That's true. That's true. So that's what. So in fact, I ended up going to Pune. While I was in Pune, I got the interview call for my engineering, saying that you have to be there next day. So I took a flight and went for my engineering rather than. So that's how I became an engineer. And I think initially, obviously, there was some regret that, I mean, why didn't I, pursue medicine? But looking back, actually, I'm not too sad about it, because I know that in medicine you have to study for at least 10, 12 years before you do anything. Whereas in engineering, it's a much, much quicker, way out of education. So I think in retrospect, I would say whatever happened for the best. And that's a very important learning. And that's something which I use all the time, that at any point in life, when you feel that, oh, things are not working out, probably there's a silver lining beyond that. You have to just wait and let it unfold. So I don't try to, push too hard in terms of trying to force fit something. If something is kind of evolving in a particular direction, I just let it happen. As a result, I kind of became a more high risk taker in my career and in time. And that's probably how I have landed up in Europe and landed up in London. Not because it was a very easy path, but it was something which was more exciting. So that's how it has been for me throughout my career. So coming back to like my first job, so I did my engineering from Bhopal and then joined Tata Motors in Jamshedpur. And when I was at Tata Motors, and it was, I would say, an absolutely fantastic experience. So it was like an extension of college life. We were like about 50 of us were there. We used to have one of the, you used to get paid, probably it was one of the highest paid jobs in the country those days. And we were like living like kings in those days with a lot of money, the best facilities, whatever you could think of. And then when you're in that company of, and a lot of them were very, very bright, most of them were like ex-IITs and, coming with really, really good educational background. Then you go there and you find that all of them are either preparing for IIM or they are preparing for US. So it was not that I was keen to do that. I think I just got into the rat race because of the influence I had in the environment that I was, because everybody was studying for IIM or for US.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Isn't that very similar to why you did medical and engineering? Because you had good grades, and if you were academically good back in the day, they were only two career choices.
I think so. I think that was, which I would probably, if in today's day and age, I would not advise the same for my kids. Yes, I would say that, follow your passion, but I guess those days, I mean, this was more, I think a more well-defined path and well-defined career. And I mean, it kind of, you just follow what the trend is, and then you end up, being in a place which is obviously quite respected and quite sought after. So during that stint, while we were working, we started giving exams. And it so happened that, of course, I had a choice between XLRI and IIM Bangalore. And XLRI, I would have been more attractive because I could have continued with my job and got an MBA from XLRI because it was a part-time evening course. But then, like I was always keen to do something which is more difficult and more challenging. And I had never lived, outside Eastern India. Because it was in Bangalore, I said, no, I want to go and experience how it is to live in a different city. And that's how that decision was made. Not because I knew more about IIM Bangalore, or it was just that, okay, it sounded very exciting that Bangalore would be quite a nice place to go and just experience life.
So Dev, you didn't know about IIM Bangalore. You were already in Jamshedpur.
Yeah.
Or I believe Jampot is what the funky name for it
That's true.
was.
That's true.
Yes. And I've heard so much about it because my mom grew up in Jamshedpur.
Oh, is it?
And I've heard about the Tatas and all that, even though her dad never worked for the Tatas. But yes.
Yeah.
So
No, it was an amazing experience.
And it was, I know it's in Ranchi or Bihar back in the day, but it was probably the most, even when I was a kid, I could sense that it was more urban than even Delhi where I grew up.
Absolutely. I think if you ask me to look back at my whole, several decades of experience, my stint with Tata Motors, which was the first job, probably was the most amazing experience I've had when it comes to working in a corporation. And that says a lot, actually, because I worked in some very, very good companies. But I don't know, maybe it was a phase in life where you probably, the feeling of working, the excitement of working that I had in my first job has probably been the highest in my whole career. And it was in a small town. Again, it was Jamshedpur is not, but it was probably one of the best facilities and the lifestyle that I've had anywhere in the world. So it's amazing, and I don't know how it is now. Obviously, things would have changed over the decades, but it was absolutely brilliant. And the kind of impact it had. So I am probably one of the few IIMB batch, like in my batch, one of the few, like maybe there are 4 or 5 of us who have stuck to engineering and to the field of manufacturing. Everybody else, they are either in FMCG or banking or consulting. So they're doing everything. And I'm talking about most of us, majority of us were engineers in my batch. And very few of us continued in the manufacturing because it was obviously not as high paying as probably what the banks were giving, or some of these consulting companies were paying it during my campus recruitment time. But because we were so deeply influenced, and I was particularly so deeply influenced by my experience of the touch and feel of dealing with manufacturing, machines, engineering, that it is. And even today, what I do, 80 to 90% of what I do is still associated with automotive. And that says a lot. I frankly, I have the choice of moving into any direction that I want, but I still get excited when I am, sitting and talking to somebody from BMW or talking to somebody from Volvo or talking to somebody from JLR. It just gives you a different kind of a pleasure, when you're talking about autonomous cars and connected cars and so many new things which are going on in the automotive world, which is besides the normal attraction of money or career positions and stuff like that.
Are you still in touch with any ex-colleagues who are still at Tata Motors? Or?
We do. So thanks to the social media WhatsApp groups. So I think the most notorious of all groups is probably my engineering and the Tata group, because we are still very, very active. And as you would expect, all of them are very, very senior people. And I don't think much has changed in the way we talk to each other even today. And just a month ago, so Saibal Mukherjee, who's currently based out of Austin in Texas, and he came down to London. This is I met him after 37 years. And he came down to watch Wimbledon tennis. And we met up together. We spent 2 days, reliving our graduate engineer trainee days. And it was as if we had never, lost touch. So that's the bond that you develop when you are at that phase in life, right? So it was fantastic. And some of the companies I work with right now, for whom I manage the European business, some of them are my ex-colleagues from those days. So they currently run, some fancy design and engineering design companies out of India. So I look after the business in Europe. So the relationship still holds good. So that's very, very
autonomous vehicles and I just recently, partly because of the advertising during the World Cup, I saw that Tata is getting big in EVs in India, or hybrid EVs and so on. But back in the day when you were there, Tata Motors was a telco, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
telco. It was
that's
telco
right.
and Tisco.
That's right.
The
That's right.
Tisco was, we also make steel, and telco was trucks.
Yep, absolutely. And those days, Tata's was known more for trucks. But I don't think we used to make, because the first car kind of it was conceived at that time, but it was not in production. So
I
we
think
used to primarily make.
car came like in end 90s or in 2000 plus. After 2000, the Indica when it came.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So those days, I think Maruti had just entered India, and they were kind of. So I mean, we used to still have ambassadors and Fiats, and some of those classic old Indian cars on the road. And then Maruti was kind of the first international brand which kind of came in and started capturing the market. But Tata's was known for its trucks, and of course we had excavator division also with Hitachi joint venture. And so that used to be the other big part of the business. But it was known more as a commercial vehicle company. So, but it kind of very clearly drew me into engineering and the manufacturing world. And I have never looked back since then. And I would say that I've probably visited most of the automotive giants, factories of whether it's American, whether it's Japanese, whether it's Korean, whether it's German. I've been fortunate to visit most of the plants in the world and interacted with a lot of these companies. And thanks to my early years, that I still have that excitement and passion about this sector. So even though it has lost its sheen a bit because they don't pay as much as probably some of the other sectors, but people who are in that sector, they will swear by it. So
I'm going to come back to it because I want to understand the sector a bit more. But we'll do that after your career journey and after your more exciting current pursuits. But let's go back. So you've basically grown up in East India, East Central, and things like that. Working in Jamshedpur, Asansol, Dhanbad, and then you decide to go to Bangalore. So tell us, how was IIM Bangalore back in the day? This was probably nearly a decade before our time, and even that right now looks like Bangalore was a small town. And when I say small town, for me, I was comparing it to Delhi. But your comparable would have been very different. So was it a larger town? Was it a different culture because it was south of India, in South India? So
yeah,
tell us about
it. It was, for me, it was. I would say the first term was all about discovery. As a new place, as a new way of life, and to start with, I mean, I used to take about 60 hours of train journey from my hometown to reach IIM Bangalore. 60 hours. So I used to literally live on the train for a few days. And those days, as you would expect, I mean, you would not have the money to travel in luxury. At least I didn't have the money.
So this was 16 hours from Dhanbad? Was that?
So from Dhanbad, I had to go to Calcutta. From Calcutta, I had to go to Chennai because there was no direct train to Bangalore. From Chennai, I had to go to Bangalore. And this included changes. This included train delays. The longest journey I've made is 72 hours between my home and IIM Bangalore. 72 hours.
Despite that, you decided, I will go to IIM Bangalore and I won't go to the easy choice of XLRI Jamshedpur.
Exactly. And where I was already established, I would have earned a lot because I would have continued doing my job, right, while I was studying. But then, sometimes you want to uproot yourself from the comforts and just, say that, okay, I'm going to face the world, right? So one of those crazy ideas. But I'm glad I did.
I'll tell you, Dev, this thought that's coming to my mind. कुछ तो लड़की का breakup वाला चक्कर हुआ होगा कि you want to get away from that town.
No, I was not.
At that time was considered the fourth IIM, even above Lucknow.
It was.
Probably the third IIM. I don't even know how Bangalore was rated back in that time.
Yeah.
But Excel,
No, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta were definitely on the top. Excel was used to compete on some subjects. Excel was considered to be better.
Yeah.
But for me, continuing in Excel would have, not made much change to my life, right? So, and
which is you want
Bangalore
to get away
was
from your breakup, the girl you had a breakup with. Was
not,
that?
I was not that lucky. I was quite I didn't have that luxury of giving that as a reason for moving away to Bangalore. So so for me it was, I think, one was the IIM brand, right? So IIM brand, I didn't go to an IIT because I went to an NIT, right? So for me it was also proving to myself that I can be in the best of the institutes of the country and survive, which I did. And so it was some amount of proving to myself that I can be with the best of the best and do well. And that was there. I was also, challenging myself to wean away from my comfort zone, from being too close to the family all the time, and just see how it is to experience it. It was not easy. Those days we used to do, typical STD calls where it would take you, you have to queue up and you have to spend a lot of money to just make a phone call. Letters. I remember first year we used to actually write letters. We didn't have any other. So you'd reach Bangalore, you would write a letter. It'll take 10 days, 15 days to reach home. Then they will write a letter. So the first communication from home used to take about a month. And for 1 month, you don't know, how's everybody. They don't know how you're doing. So it was a very different world. It's very difficult to describe. I don't think youngsters can even visualize what kind of life it was those days, right?
I'll tell you. So I've grown up similar, but when I was a kid, not when I was in the IIM days, when that was exactly, and I've grown up with those memories. But it's difficult even for me to visualize that, Dev. When you say it, I remember it, but it's such a vague and a faint memory. Ki chitti likhte the, and then someone, and we used to have pen pals and this and that, and you never know. I don't even know what those kind of things will be called right now. But I used to write a letter, and then that letter will reach this person who is actually 5 hours away by car, but will reach them probably 2 weeks later. And then they will reply. And yeah, I'm not going to say those were the days in any positive or negative connotation, but they were very different days. And everyone was through that. So I remember it, but it's very, very faint memories that I've forgotten completely.
Yeah. No, for me, I think my memories of those days quite fresh. Even I frankly don't I don't feel that so many years have gone past. When I recently attended the alumni meet in London, right? So, and we meet every month in London, so I was talking to somebody, there's a lot of young alumni who are there. And the first thing you ask is, okay, which batch are you from? The realization dawned on me when recently, so I said I'm from the 91 batch. The young alumni who was with me and we were talking, he said that I was not born in 1991. That's when it hit me hard that I think I've grown old. Otherwise, in your head, you still feel that you are. For me, it's like IIM days are as fresh as yesterday. How we used to sit at the student canteen and how we used to have Maggie at the 9th canteen and how we used to, it's not very, very, it doesn't feel like it's a long time ago. But of course, everything has changed. If you go now, how the campus looks and how it is versus how it was when I joined, obviously it's a lot different. But when we meet up as with batchmates, and it just comes back instantly. It doesn't take more than a minute. In fact, 2 days ago I met up with Mahesh. So he's based in Bangalore. He runs a company, and he's done very, very well for himself. So he came to London for some personal his brother's son's marriage, and we met up. And it just doesn't feel like we just instant. So he used to play the guitar those days. I used to play the guitar. We instantly we ended up in a pub in London. Both of us went and had a good time together. It's like it's like, time hasn't just flown at all since those days. And that is
Tell us more about your
beauty.
Bangalore days. Tell us more about your Bangalore days.
So Bangalore
How much guitar, how much pubbing, and how much studying did you do?
So when I went into IIM Bangalore, first of all, the campus was very different, right? So the campus was the library building was not there. So it was under construction. The hostel was, I think, only some of the blocks were. I think G and H were not yet built. So I think there were 50 of us which were actually living in the staff quarters. So as students, the first few, I think first term or the first year, many of us actually stayed in the staff quarters because there was not enough room for us in the campus, in the hostel. So I'm talking about those days when the campus was just being built, still being built. We didn't have a library, active library. I think in the second year, we actually got the access to the library. And, the plants, it was like, it's when you go now, you can't recognize. There's no comparison, right? And those days, it was still beautiful building. I mean, it was a classic architecture by Doshi even those days, right? It was one of the buildings which has won several awards. And so, and coming from where I was, because I was a small town boy, for me, it was still absolutely amazing. When we used to walk to the class and, there's typical, the whole architecture of IIMB is very, very open to the sky kind of architecture. And it used to feel fantastic. But at the same time, personally, for me, the first term was all about, gauging where I stand, because I had no clue of whether, I will survive in this place or not, because you don't know. Most of the guys are, well, the moment you talk to them, everybody's got credentials which is scary. Everybody is like coming with absolutely impeccable backgrounds and so on and so forth. So the campus was very different those days. And I still remember we were considered to be, Bannerghatta was considered to be back of the beyond. So most of the auto rickshaws, they would refuse to go there. And it'll take a lot of cajoling, requesting them that, okay, please, from Jayanagar to Bannerghatta used to be like, oh, I'm going into the, back of the beyond kind of feeling those days.
But if I share that even a decade after you, which is around the time when I graduated, it was like probably slightly less, but not by too much. Once you go into Bannerghatta Road, after the first maybe half a mile, it just goes all dark. And the first there used to be a village, I forget the name, and a few shops. A few shops, and then probably 200 meters after that was IIMB and so on. And we've had guests of all 4 out of the 5 phases of IIM Bangalore, that campus-wise, that I can think of. Yeah. So the first one, we had someone who was in the early 80s, maybe 83 or something. First few batches of IIM Bangalore when they didn't have a campus. Then
that's true. They used to.
Campus was coming up. It wasn't fully done.
I think it was St. Joseph's College or something in the city where they used to operate from.
Yes, that's right. St. Joseph's. Yeah. And then I call myself part of the third phase. When we were there, we thought at that time that the campus is done. And mainly because at the time there weren't any plans to expand. But maybe a decade down the line, then they said, okay, let's double the batch size, treble the batch size. I believe from our batch of about 180 MBAs, I think if I remember right, is about 600 right now.
I know. It's increased
a lot more hostels. I don't know if you've visited recently. I haven't, and not in more than a decade. But I believe there's like a lot more. And that's the fourth phase, which we've also had guests from that phase of IIM Bangalore campus wise. And then there is a fifth phase, which is about to start, as I heard. So one of our first few guests was Professor Saurabh Mukherjee on this channel. And he was telling us they're building a huge campus separately. And that's from whatever sneak peek he has given us, as probably going to be more modern than any other campus in UK or US that I've even heard of, forget having seen.
Wow.
So they're building something exceptional, but we'll wait for that campus to be built and for us to get a few alumni, to get an alumni from the fifth phase of campus in IIM Bangalore. But yeah, I'm like feeling so nostalgic based on your Bileka Halli and those days. But tell me about your academic life, your in-campus life and placements. How did that work out back then?
So I would say, like I said, so first term, I think by second term, I could figure out where I stand, right? So once you know that you are kind of average, above average, life becomes very easy. You know, all you have to do is just sustain yourself in that bracket. And things, you know, then you kind of opening up and exploring other activities. And that's exactly what happened with me. And I have been, I don't know what my connection is with music, but it's something which kind of has kept me attached to that world right from very early days when I had no access to music. So nobody in my family really was too deeply inclined towards music, and I was, funnily enough, for some reason, I was more inclined towards Western music rather than Indian music. Maybe because I think Indian music was more difficult for me in terms of, you know, it's technically more complicated than Western music. So music has kind of been a very important part of my existence, even during engineering days. So I had a band right from engineering days onwards. In Jamshedpur, I had a band. And I continued that. So the moment I got some free space that I knew that, okay, so I can survive in this IIM competition and relative grading and all that I'm not going to, you know, be thrown out of the campus. That's when I immediately started getting into the music scene. And then we formed a band called Contraband, and my current band is also called by the same name. So the name of my band has continued. And we used to, so we had like... So
you kept the IP, you kept the IP of Contraband?
Absolutely. Because the other band members have kind of been in and out. They still play music, but we are all over the world. So we are spread out and we are still in touch. I'm talking with the IIM bandmates. And we started having a lot of fun when the band came alive. And I still remember, obviously, when the exam used to be there, everybody used to obviously slog it out. You know, we used to study overnight and, you know, do whatever it takes to just get through the exam. But the moment the exams used to get over, you know, these sessions used to start. So we were not allowed to play music inside because the hostel, obviously, people would complain. And also we would actually go to the foyer of the main building. And we had a music room where the drums and everything used to be kept in that.
Did you have the amphitheater back then?
It came. So we had the quadrangle came up. So the hostel quad. So we had actually gigs in the quad also. So
quad, which is now called L Square, is that the...
I don't know what's L Square, but it was in the middle of 4 hostels. So
4 hostels were free?
I'm not... I think it was...
Okay, think about it. Was there 3 hostels? Yeah. Was it between A, B, and E blocks?
Yeah, I think so. That's the one I'm talking about. So we used to have live gigs over there, and you can imagine, you know, it's so much fun in campus, and people would, and it was the first time I think where it was a mixed hostel, right? So the E block was a mixed block for us in our batch for the first time, and obviously, I mean, it had a kind of a vibe which was absolutely awesome. We had a fantastic time while we were at IIM. Food wise, not the best, but we used to survive the canteen food. But
are you saying Desan wasn't there yet?
What? Sorry?
Do you know someone called Desan?
No.
Okay, that means he hadn't arrived yet.
Okay.
Just a few years after that, so Desan was the superstar of our batch, and at our time, IIM Bangalore food was by far, like, undisputed the best food within the 4 IIMs that were there at that time.
Seriously.
So that was part of one of my points of selection back in the day.
Seriously,
Hamilton.
no. We didn't have that luxury. That
Yeah.
we used to
was
dread
like-
going into the West.
like,
Actually,
just a few people can turn around so much bigger. But we'll come to that as part of your current career in a bit. But tell us, Dev, I am very intrigued and curious. When did this music band, contraband, come about? Was it second term, third term? How did it come about? Who were these other people? Throw a bit of color on that.
I think the band took shape after the second term,
Okay.
and so we had. I mean, you'll have to excuse me. I remember most of my band batchmates by their nicknames. So Venkat, who is the CEO of India Infoline, I think so. He was the drummer. Santi, who runs a fund out of Chennai, he was one of the finest lead guitarists I had come across. He's based out of Chennai. He still continues in Chennai. SK was on the SK Banerjee. He was in Japan. He's just relocated. So SK was the bass guitarist. And who else was there? And I was on the vocals and rhythm. And I remember the Freshers Night. So we played at the Freshers Night also. And Venki, who's a big, I mean, he's a big name in Bombay, and he's like considered to be a finance guru and all that. He was so drunk that while he was playing the drums kept shifting forward, and it reached a point where he fell off the stage. And the thing is, most of the people were so drunk that nobody realized that the drummer has fallen off. So we had
The best part of being drunk is that whatever you do, as long as everyone else is drunk,
exactly.
no one cares about it. That has changed so much in social life because of someone having to drive you back. Unless you're on campus, people have to drive you back. You need one sober person. So that person is the secret holder, I believe. He knows everything. Apart from getting bored, he knows everyone's secrets. No one else remembers. Only this one person
Exactly.
remembers driving you, or she's driving you back.
That's true.
So the batch has been very successful. And like you said, like most batches, there have been some exceptions because of economic cycles.
Yeah.
But that brings me to a point. 1991 was when the Indian economy was in the doldrums. Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh hadn't happened yet. How were your placements? What used to happen back in the day?
Yes, so we had, I think our placement was quite good, I would say. I mean, I think IIM was still quite a very, very sought after. The challenge used to be more in terms of, I remember TAS, Tata Administrative Service, they were not allowed to come on the first day, so they didn't come to the campus. But then there were quite a few of us contacted separately. We met up with them in Windsor Manor. It was like still the biggest and the best names used to be there, right? So used to come. I think everybody got placed. I don't remember anybody, The trend, obviously, it has changed over the years in terms of, but again, those days, banking used to attract a lot of talent. FMCG used to attract a lot of talent in the beginning. And most of it was driven by, the perks and the money they used to kind of offer. For me, it was, I wanted to get into software, but because my background was in Tata Motors, the kind of money which, so iShare paid a lot at the campus. They gave, I started off at 2 levels higher than normal entry level. So, I mean, it was very difficult to refuse some of these offers. And
was that because you started 2 levels higher because of Tata Motors experience?
Because of my past experience. And I think even those days, I think IIMB had more students with work experience than some of the other IIMs. So IIMB had that. I don't know if it continues to be like that, but IIMB used to value experienced entry students coming in with experience as I don't know if it was a conscious
lucrative offer from iShare. Is that correct?
I had TCS also, but then TCS was the difference was so huge in terms of salary that that I was getting a car in iShare. I was I was starting at a manager level. I mean, it was too foolish not to join them. It was automotive.
I can imagine getting a car itself was like कि your IES वाले बाबू हो गए हैं.
Yeah. It was a big work. Not many companies did that. Not many companies.
Yeah. No, not right out of IIM. Maybe in a few years, but yes.
Yeah.
So you were 2 levels over, so you joined. But give me a picture, and which is my curiosity is, what did top salary mean back in the day? What did average salary mean in terms of lakhs per annum? I'm not using crores per annum yet because I know.
Yeah. No, I think it was. So iShare money wise was higher than the starting salary of banks. So we used to have like Citi was on first day. I remember.
So top salary kitni thi? 1 lakh, 2 lakh?
It used to be about a lakh per month.
1 lakh top salary.
Yeah. So which was not. I mean, it was quite high those days because obviously, I mean, it was worth quite a lot those days also. So I think I had 1.2 lakhs or 1.3 lakhs. Something.
Just to put it in perspective, in 1991, I was preparing for my boards. I still remember back in the day what 5 rupees could buy. And my very rough, recently I was discussing with someone is, I think it's about 100x right now, back from those school days that I remember in 35 years. So if I use that, and this is like, again, there is no science. It was like just 2 or 3 things that we compared and the 100x came about. What 5 rupees could buy is, right now in India, you probably need 500-ish.
Absolutely.
To buy. So 1 lakh back in the day is 1 crore right now. We're talking about 1 crore salary based on the same proportionate improvement.
Yeah, it was a decent amount of money. I think
that triangulation works because even when you hear about IIM placements right now, it's about 1 crore is about the top salary right now.
Yeah.
Average must be lower. Average is lower.
Yeah, and I remember, just to give you a benchmark, so our term fee used to be less than 1,000 rupees, term fees, those days. So I think 970 rupees for one term, the fees used to be like about less than 1,000 rupees. So
1,000.
Obviously,
about 6,000, you were done with 2 years of MBA.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and then of course some amount for hostel and food
and would your average salary be more than 50,000 if your top salary was 100, or was that like literally skewed?
I think the first 3-4 days, the companies which used to come, they used to be quite attractive. And again, the perks used to be very good, right? So most of these banks used to give accommodation. I'm talking about in best of cities. They used to give a lot of perks. I think we were pampered. I mean, frankly speaking, in those days, we were actually quite pampered. Once you come out of that place, I think you're spoiled. You're literally spoiled. I think that continues with IIM to some extent, which kind of biases your priorities in life also. But I think, I guess that you owe it to the institute, right? Because of the brand and because of the fact
quickly. So you joined Tata Motors. You continued in automotive, the industry that you were starting to increase your experience in. Tell us what happened then. Where all have you worked in the automotive industry?
So after that, I worked in iShare, and I started it. So I was looking at the European market. So I was in the exports international division for iShare. That's when my love for Europe kind of started. And since then, so I have got few specializations as a professional. So I am super specialized in automotive. I'm super specialized in Europe because right after MBA onwards, and like you rightly pointed out, so the liberalization of Indian economy started with Manmohan Singh in 93, 94. 94, it actually kind of, because that was one of the difficult periods when there was no Forex left. Not much Forex was left in India, where they had just 1 week's reserve left or something like that. And they made some very drastic changes to the international business export-import policies and stuff like that. And since then, I was lucky enough to be in the international side of business. So even though I was based out of Delhi, I was actually looking after exports business of automotive components, which are made by iShare into Europe. And that's how...
What kind of products were these?
So these were all...
I remember from practice.
So we used to do all kinds of machine castings, machine forgings, different kinds of engine parts. Because iShare also used to make engines in Parwanu in Himachal, for example, and also in Pithampur in Madhya Pradesh. So we used to export these components. It was not very common those days to export out of India. And I had customers in Germany those days. Imagine, where we used to, I had suppliers. I used to also get some parts made out of from a suppliers in Faridabad, and I used to go to Gujarat, to places like Anand, and which was like small towns. These are like small towns, and they would make these parts, and we would export it into Germany, which would go into some of the most sophisticated diesel engines, which used to be a sense of pride used to be there, but at the same time used to be a lot of surprise also used to be there, that how can what we are making in some place in Faridabad is going all the way to Germany, and we are able to export. So it was a lot of hard work, because those days the quality systems, everything was just about evolving in manufacturing. Those what we take for granted these days, whether it's the ISO's certifications or those days, we used to have this lean manufacturing concepts and stuff like that. There used to be TQM, total quality management. These are like very old jargons, which kind of evolved into other things.
These jargons are what we learned at IIMs. I'm sure it was starting back then.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I believe they are considered outdated now. However, I think the new concepts are just building upon them rather than completely reinventing the wheel.
Absolutely. No, manufacturing, I think, is still very, very, because I've had a very close association with the car industry in Germany. And Germany, as you know, is a powerhouse of the automotive world. Even today, I mean, what they do in Germany is still considered to be absolutely cutting edge, and I would say they are much ahead of Detroit or Japan in many areas of technology, except software. I think software is where they are probably not. I'm talking with the software which goes into the cars. Probably they are not at the same level as what probably California has done with because of Teslas and some of the new what we
Texas,
call software.
Texas.
Yeah. So it is like the software-defined vehicles is a different world, but that has happened only in the last 5-10 years. But it's you see the fundamentals of manufacturing, right? In terms of how you can produce something, car after car after car, and that applies to anything that's being produced on a mass scale, to the same precision, something which continues to work and it works well for years and years and years. That's the kind of evolution which has happened in that world, which is very different from the software world, right? Software world is, a lot of it is, I would still, coming from the brick and mortar background, I mean, software still, I don't trust it as much as the brick and mortar world in terms of what it does. But software is so integral part of everything that we do today that you can't ignore it. So anyways, coming back to the journey, so I was continued with iShare, then got into international business. I was part of the Foreign Office, the British government. So at the British High Commission, they actually hired MBAs from IIMs, primarily from IIMs, IIMs and the Foreign Institute of Trade in Delhi, FTI, right? What is it called? The MBA school in Delhi, which just specializes in IFT. IFT. Yeah. So I did one stint with the British High Commission as a commercial head for automotive in their economic and commercial section, where so a lot of inward investment from Britain, I was actually playing a role in in advising them how to go about setting up business in India. So that was again a very brilliant.
All this was there. All this was when you were back in India. The UK
This was in
Foreign
Delhi.
Office.
Yeah. This was I was in Delhi.
In Delhi.
Right. Yeah.
So you
I was
were
in Delhi.
helping UK companies set up in India rather than the
That's
other way around at that time.
That's right. So that time, because
And
Indian
before
economy,
that- Before that, you were helping Eicher go into Europe and work with German companies.
that's right.
So you
Not only German,
by this time,
all of Europe.
you were both inbound and outbound.
That's right. That's right. And so it was primarily, so because of my background in automotive, I was heading the automotive industry vertical within the economic and commercial section in India. So, which was at a very young age. I was hardly, like some 6, 7 years, 8 years of experience after engineering. And so it was very, very interesting in terms of an assignment. I got to travel, meet all the Rolls Royces and the Aston Martins and the GLRs of the world. Those days, I'm talking about like in the 90s, I actually visited them, interacted with them. They were looking at India those days in terms of collaboration, JVs, partnerships, and stuff like that. So I was lucky to do. And then so I did one term, which is like a 3-year contract with them. Because it was the highest level that a non-diplomat could get in the High Commission. So I didn't continue with that job. So I could have renewed for another term, but I didn't, because there was no growth over there. I went back into the industry. So I got hired by Ford Motor Company that time, and I moved to Chennai from Delhi. And Ford was setting up their own plant. So Ford had those days what is called Ford Auto Components Division. So it was called ACD, Auto Components Division. And I was hired by them to develop the market for the components division in India. And I relocated to Chennai from Delhi, which was totally again a new stint in my career. But it was brilliant. It was still very, very a lot of hard work, because I used to like get up at 6 a.m, catch a bus, and come back at 11 p.m. for 3 years, because we were setting up a new factory. For 3 years, I was like leaving at 6 a.m, and we used to work 6 days a week. There was no 5-day concept those days, like typical manufacturing plants in India. So for 3 years, I actually didn't have any social life, because I was just spending time in the factory.
So this was Ford in Chennai.
This was Ford. So Ford had Ford in Chennai. So Ford had two entities. One was the car plant, and the other was the components plant, which subsequently got renamed as Visteon Automotive Systems. So they branched off their components business separately, because they wanted the components business to serve not just Ford, but all automotive companies. And that's what happened with most of the big, like with General Motors, they branched off their components division into Delphi. So every Toyota branched off their components division into Denso. So that's what all the big car companies did, because the component industry, they could actually work not only with one OEM, but they could work with several OEMs. So I was part of the.
So I've heard this.
That's how I
heard the story. You can call it a mini case study. A mini case study about. I believe you were talking about the late 90s when Ford launched in India.
That's right. So it was 97 till 2000. Actually, I was there.
Ford Escort or something. It completely bombed. Despite
Ford
all
Icon.
intentions.
Yeah. That's right.
Ford Icon. Icon came later. I think they started with Escort, then they improved with Icon and things like that.
Correct.
So I heard this story from someone I believe is still in the industry. I don't know, but was very senior. Is mentioned to me, and I don't know how far that is true, but came from someone, is that Ford bombed because its market research, they missed one crucial point. They made great cars. They got good components. They got a pricing right also to some extent, but no one bought the car. And it took them about a year to figure out why. And the reason was because in their American thinking, they had more leg room in the front seats and less in the rear seats. But in India, a person buying a Ford had a driver at that time. Because Ford was like, I mean, today's
premium.
I don't know, name super premium car. Ford for India in the 90s was that car. And driver को leg room मिल रहा है और मेरे को नहीं मिल रहा है तो कौन खरीदेगा? So
very true.
People try out cars by sitting in the rear seat rather than by sitting in the driving seat.
Very true. Very true. No, these are very, and those days, because they were not building the whole car in India, right? They were what is called a CKD, like completely knocked down units they used to bring, right? So they would actually just bring the car in sub parts and assemble it in India. So the actual manufacturing was not completely grounds up for the market. So, and all these problems used to be there primarily because it was just, picked up from another market and brought it. And
Copy-paste.
Absolutely. And that's why they couldn't compete with Maruti. And then subsequently, Hyundai came in more or less at the same time. And they launched the Santros and the Accents. I think it was called Accent that day. So they launched more or less at the same time because they were more sensitive to what the local market needed. They kind of completely overshadowed.
I don't know. In fact, I also remember that Hyundai actually became such a serious, despite being a new entrant, they challenged the leader Maruti at that time because they just listened to, and I heard all these stories because I was in marketing, and these were things that some seniors who were like different industries used to tell us and gossip and all that, is how to listen to the customer, how just get the little tiny points, and the tiny points become very big in terms of sales.
Very true. And because Hyundai was also my customer, because I was supplying air conditioning systems and the dashboard electronics to Hyundai at the same time from as Visteon, right? So I was part of the conference. So they used to be and I used to visit their factory in Sri Perumbudur in Chennai. And I used to obviously visit Maraimalanagar where Ford factory was. When you enter the factory, you could actually make out the difference, like how much space Ford used to waste inside the factory because it was designed in the American way. Whereas Hyundai was designed as per the Asian way where they actually utilize the space optimally. So the machines, you walk into the factory, you can make out the difference in density of how the plant looks and feels. And that it has a direct impact on the cost, right? So because you're utilizing your utilities, your land cost, whatever variables are there for, and you could make out, you could see that Ford will never be able to compete with a company like Hyundai. And that was true with Japanese companies also. I mean, they were so smart. I mean, in terms of, if you look at how Maruti is set up, for example, it's very, very optimally designed. I mean, they used to visit us. Even Maruti used to be my customer. I mean, they would visit and they would question, if you have got, say, car parking, which is superfluous, for example, they'll question, why have you got wasting that space and when not utilizing, for example. Which was not the case in Ford. Ford was like, everything was liberal. You take as much space as you want, make it as generous as possible. But that was, again, a lack of understanding of the local market. And India was such a competitive, price-sensitive market. You just couldn't, survive with American costs or European costs. So it was very, very interesting. So brick and mortar experience. So like first 10 years of my career, I was actually in the plant. I was actually, hands-on manufacturing, holding, even using, measuring parts and checking for things and looking at, so which obviously gets you very, very close to the fundamentals of the industry. And then by then the whole industry was shifting towards IT software, and you could see, that all these the companies. I think when I was there, I think even Infosys was not in the campus. It was. I don't think they even came to the campus those days, and they were not. The only TCS used to be the big name. Even TCS was, like I said, they were not very attractive employers those days, because they're not paying so much, and within 10 years, the whole world changed. And suddenly the IT sector and the tech sector just started taking off. And then I could feel the difference between, what was happening in the manufacturing side versus. So it so happened that I got the opportunity to move to the Satyam Group, and that was, I initially joined Satyam Infoway actually, which was those days was one of the very, very valued e-commerce company in the world. So there used to be a company called Sterling Commerce in US, which had become it had $1 billion valuation. And in India, Satyam Infoway, which became SIFI subsequently, they wanted to set up an e-commerce, a B2B portal for automotive. And then they picked me up to set it up and run that. So I did that for about 3 years.
And this was when? Was it around 2000, 2001?
2000 to 2003. 2000 to 2003. And
right.
That was when...
I mean, I'm just trying to piece it together. And especially for a lot of our younger viewers who might not even have been born then, this was the initial seed of e-commerce. Before e-commerce became fashionable, which still took it 10 years, like Dave is saying. 2000 to 2010 was when all these foundations were being laid. And you got into Dave, you got into internet, technology, web commerce, e-commerce in 2000.
Which was the beginning. It was the dot-com era, right? That was the dot-com era where dot-coms had...
Yeah, but e-commerce wasn't supposed to be big. This was before Amazon and eBay and all these became big.
Yeah. In fact, you'll be surprised. So we set up...
That's why there was a dot-com bubble, and then those hopes didn't come true. There was a bust, but there were still hopes. They were on paper. To some extent, a bit like generative AI today, but that will digress a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are hopes. Yeah. And then there is, today you see an Amazon, today you see everyone is e-commerce and high streets are dying. It is so big right now. No one is buying. I mean, I can walk for 5 minutes and buy something possibly cheaper.
Very true.
But I'll go on my phone and order it for Amazon and get it tomorrow at a higher price. And that's fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and the big learning that I had in terms of, so like I said, I mean, I was a risk taker since then. So I because it was a new world, new technology, new thing happening in the world, I jumped into it. Of course, they did pay quite well. So they were good paymasters because I think this industry was able to attract a lot of investments based on, again, the whole .com e-commerce hype that was built around those days. But what we created then, and when I look back, I mean, it's nearly 20 years, right, since then, where today online shopping is, you don't even think twice about online. Those days, it was a little bit, we were much ahead of its time. So the internet infrastructure itself had not matured. So we were still on dial-ups. We were still, the internet was available only in cafes, and it's you can't even imagine what we're talking about. Today's generation will be able to relate to what we're saying. So you would, if you want to go onto the internet, you actually go to a internet cafe and sit there and then do your internet. It's not like you can just log into your laptop or your phone. So the infrastructure was not ready. The user behavior was a big bottleneck, right? So people were not willing to actually go online and do any transaction. It was like probably the beginning. It was, I think, world over. It was not just, there was no Amazon those days. People were just kind of setting up. And what we created then in Satyam Infoway is exactly what Alibaba is today. So if we had the staying power in those days and had just continued, you could have actually created another Amazon or another Alibaba. But again, there are several things which has to move along if you really want to. So that's the thing with new tech, right? So whatever we are looking at today in Gen AI or whatever other fields you are looking at. It's not just about on its own. The technology is very much believable and very much has potential. But then for it to get commercialized and adapted and, to make money out of it, I think you have to ensure that there are other pieces which fall into place. Same thing applies for even simple things like the electric vehicle, for example. I mean, everybody's pushing for it. You're getting incentives. There are reasons why people, if everything doesn't fall into place in terms of infrastructure support, in terms of the cost of the battery, and I think it's not sustainable. It will probably last for a few years. And then again, it will kind of have people will probably go back to something which is more dependable or, less difficult to manage. So it's
Very well said.
It's like new tech, it comes with question marks. And I think either you need to have that foresight of what will work. You should be able to read into that, or you have to, let somebody else fail and then you build on, learn from the failures and then grow your business on top of it. So it's very, very,
and I think absolutely you have that foresight. And in my opinion, 2000, you joined SIFI. In hindsight, that was your best foresight decision. And I'm going to now, let's go on your tech journey, your tech career journey.
Yeah. So after Satyam Infoway, I mean, looking at how things were shaping up in the world and the way India was taking off in the tech sector, in the IT sector. Interestingly enough, I specialized in my MBA in systems and marketing. So I had a soft corner for systems right from, campus days. But because I was too deep into the automotive sector, it was difficult to kind of completely uproot and get into software right at the beginning, which I tried. But like I said, financially, it was not very attractive. So in 2002, 2003, when the IT sector in India started booming and companies were really kind of going global in terms of their ambitions, in terms of their business. So I got this opportunity. So what happened, interestingly, so Satyam Infoway, even though it was part of the Satyam group, when Satyam Infoway kind of started waning in the .com e-commerce sector, Satyam Computers bought over completely. So they took the management in, and all employees of Satyam Infoway became employees of Satyam Computers. And so my employer changed from Satyam Infoway to Satyam Computers. And because of my background in automotive, I was straight away plugged into the automotive business unit of Satyam Computers. And I was given the responsibility.
So my recollection of that, and maybe a reasoning, was that was a time when hardware or selling computers was doing more. IT services were starting to increase, but the internet or web commerce was sucking up or bleeding money.
Yep, that's true.
Is that correct? Is that why SIFI went into?
That's because the thing is, the e-commerce, our revenues, it's like how today's, I don't know, a lot of the AI companies are. So valuation is phenomenal, but the actual revenue is not enough, right? So it's all on projected revenue. It's all on future you run the company primarily on investments. And what happened is that a few interesting things happened. So Y2K happened in the year 2000, right? Where a lot of Indian companies, particularly the Satyam Computers, they made a lot of money in Y2K projects. And that kind of opened up the world because they started working with the Fortune 500 companies in fixing the Y2K problems. And suddenly the company went, one is that they had global customers, they had a lot of cash, which they had earned internationally. And then the ambition that it was true with most of the IT companies in India. So Y2K was I think it was quite an interesting inflection point in the Indian IT industry.
Dave, by the way, do you know one thing? So I was at IIM around that same time, 99, 2000. And when we were graduating back in late 1999, everyone thought, and so we aren't different, like the world's going to end. The tech world is going to end now. And
Yeah.
for so many of our viewers who haven't lived through those times, it sounds hilarious. In fact, like 6 months after that, it sounded hilarious to us because the world ended.
True.
And then you sound, oh my God, we're still alive.
Yeah. No, but that's the interesting thing
But
about
that was-
technology, right? So it
That-
moves in I don't know, in 3 to 5 year kind of wave. And it goes through that cycle, and then it moves to the next phase, and it moves to the next. And if you just roll back and look at the last 20, 25 years in this space, you always had something which is kind of pushing the innovation and pushing the trend in the industry. Like right now, how Gen AI is kind of, they are the center of all imagination for everyone. I mean, it's always something or the other which kind of keeps the industry going.
So welcome back, Dev. We are recording this on a different day because we had some logistical issues on all sides, and Viks hadn't joined us. So welcome to this podcast, Viks. Thank you for making it. And I hope you're feeling much better.
Yeah, thank you, Vigrani, for not mentioning my diarrhea.
I don't know. It was like where we left off the other day. You had shown all the foresight in moving to a tech career from automobiles, from automobile manufacturing, although within tech, Sifi and Wipro and Satyam, which later became Tech Mahindra, didn't it?
That's right.
Got overly after there was a huge scam, but I suspect that might have been after your time.
Yeah, much later. Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't have any hand in that.
No, not at all.
Nothing that you can say on screen.
Absolutely. Otherwise, I would have been rich.
Tell us a bit more. What happened then once you moved the switch to tech? Was there a cultural difference between the two industries? Because it seems like completely different poles apart.
Yeah. So the thing is, I was mentioned and like talked about my earlier part of my career, where I was actually in the brick and mortar world. I worked for Tata's, I worked for Eicher, I worked for Food Components, where I was actually, in the factory, dirting my hands on the machines or, with the components, and which was very, being a mechanical engineer as a base training as a mechanical engineer, I used to enjoy it. So, and automotive, like I mentioned earlier, it was something which really, used to get me excited. So then what the whole world was kind of, I could see that everything is moving towards the IT computer-led, you could see the salary differences emerging between the brick and mortar world and what the tech companies were paying. So for me, it was like, and I had a soft corner. Like during my MBA, I specialized in marketing and systems. So systems, it was something which I liked. And interestingly enough, when I graduated in 91, I had a subject called AI. Long ago, which I never thought that will become as important as what it is today. But it has taken several decades before it really, has started making difference. So I was glad to get the opportunity to move into the services sector. But I had made a very conscious decision that even if I'm in that sector, I will stay in a field which is related to manufacturing and automotive. And I was lucky with that. So Satyam Infoway, which was Sifi that time, they actually asked me to set up a B2B e-commerce platform for the auto industry. So I actually was setting up what was like an equivalent of a Covisint in the global sense, which was like the largest automotive platform. And we were trying to replicate that in India with all the big OEMs and tier ones. And so that was kind of using my industry experience into converting it into a e-commerce platform. So it was very exciting. I was working out of Tidal Park in Chennai, which was one of the fancy buildings, which had just recently been built up. And it was different from being in a factory, which is full of oil and grease. And, so I enjoyed that bit, but at the same time, like you said, culturally, it's very, very different, right? So you are, it's like everybody is more conceptual, everybody is more white collared. It's more discussions on the whiteboard or on the, it's not something where you are physically dealing with things. And that took a little bit of adjustment to where I had to make certain adjustments in the way I had to kind of make myself like the non-physical part of the industry. And
More than physical versus non-physical in terms of culture, how you treat people differently. I mean, every company is different, but are there broad sectoral differences? Since you worked in a number of companies in automotive, number of companies in...
So the main difference was that we didn't have blue-collar workers, right? So that was the only major difference.
Data entry operator blue collar नहीं है IT के लिए.
I mean, not really, because it's different when you are in the shop floor. It's a very different kind of an environment, right? It's more, definitely more demanding than what it is in a nice air conditioned office where you're sitting in a fancy building and all that. So even and at the same time, the way work is done is very different. The way you measure work is very different. So it's difficult. It is difficult to compare both. So the brick and mortar side, where you are, for example, working in a steel plant, working in a power station. It's very different than working in a R&D lab of a company, for example.
Working in an AC environment reminded me from 2 decades ago. So back in the day when I started my career, I was in sales and marketing in FMCG. Now, while we say sales and marketing together, sales is a very different thing where you have to literally, in FMCG, you have to literally go out, work with the distributor, do market visits, what's happening, what not. And maybe a few days you might sit in office in the AC. And marketing is, you'll largely be in the AC office. And maybe a few days a month, you'll just go out and see what's happening.
True.
So I had this colleague who moved from sales to marketing and didn't enjoy it at all. And I asked him once, it's like, Bafu, why did you move to marketing? You love sales and all that. I love sales, but I the heat ke liye, I just came here. So I try to do some more sales. I mean, it's a different thing. I mean, without naming names, is he finally moved to a division of similar to marketing, which was about head office sales and customer marketing, which was all about sales, but sitting in the AC office sales. So he ended up doing that and has made a big name in the last 2 decades in that career. But I still remember. And if he's watching, he knows who he is. And who...
So it was. I think it required a little bit of adaptation in the way you work, the way you think. But then, because it was a very happening sector, right? So it was something which I very quickly embraced that. And then, as I mentioned last time, so then SIFI got taken over by Satyam, the parent Satyam Computers that time. And then in Satyam Computers, which was a proper like a IT and IT enabled services company, which was making its mark in the global IT world. So they had just set up an automotive business unit. And then I was kind of a natural choice. So I got handpicked and then I was put into that particular vertical, which was one of the few verticals those days. So those days, most of the IT companies used to be more horizontal. So, you'll have an SAP team and you have an ERP team and you'll have a testing team. They never had verticalized industry specific business units. So that time they had just formed the automotive business unit. And then I was brought in to create what is called the Center of Excellence for Automotive. So, which actually was nothing else but a team of domain specialists in that industry who could actually, lend so much of industry knowledge, enough industry knowledge to the IT, programming team that they can then write software, develop systems which are very closely aligned to the industry. I mean, it may seem quite obvious today, but those days it was considered to be something very, very different and special. So we were actually building point solutions, 20, 25 years ago. We were, which was not very common in the IT. And that, in fact, I had gone, like I still remember I had gone on a tour to US, meeting all the General Motors, Ford, Toyota, all some of the big OEMs, telling them about, what some of our point solutions can do for them. And we were actually able to catch their attention and get meetings just because we were doing something very specific to the industry.
So what's a point solution?
So point solution is where you are developing something which is very specific to that industry problem, to the industry's problem. So I remember there was a problem that time, so Ford had a huge crisis with the tires actually were they were bursting because of imbalance in the tire pressure, and the car was actually not. So it was Firestone which was supplying the tires, and they had some issue. It's a big case study. In fact, they had some loss of lives also. So then US government, they passed a law saying that you have to have a system which can measure the tire pressure while the car, and if the tire pressure is fluctuating, you should get an alert so it was kind of the beginning of what we call the active safety systems, what we call the ADAS systems now today. So those days, there was no concept of ADAS. ADAS didn't exist. But then that was the time when real-time monitoring of performance characteristics started happening. And in Satyam Computers, we had built a solution which actually could measure the tire pressure while you are actually running the car. And that was something which was very relevant for the industry. And that solution does not apply to other sectors because other sectors are not using tires the way auto sector is using. And that gets you a project with the OEM. So you can actually break through in OEMs where otherwise they would, not necessarily give you an opportunity. So that's what we are talking about in terms of point solutions. So, there was something which we also created. It's like, how the end of life of a car, how that can be categorized, how that can be recycled. And these are like much before, recycling and, sustainability and environmental friendliness and all came into. So it was quite ahead of its times, I would say. I know that IBM used to do something like that earlier those days, but none of the other competitors used to do something as specific as that. And that obviously required industry specialists to come in and then contribute to the whole development of. So that's how. So I was still enjoying the fact that I was working related to the auto sector. I was meeting the car companies and the truck companies and the tier ones globally. And then that time I had the opportunity so they sent me to Germany to head the business in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, for Satyam Computers. And I chose Germany again because it was a natural choice, because it was one of the big automotive centers in the world. And I used to, because I was in my earlier jobs also, I was actually working a lot with Europe. So I was keen to kind of super specialize in Europe because I felt that still a lot can be done in terms of growing the business in Europe vis-a-vis US. So I moved to Germany, worked there. Initially, I was with Satyam Computers, then Wipro Technologies. They spotted me and they picked me up to set up their automotive business in Europe. Then I worked with Wipro Technologies in the automotive space, basically developing their automotive footprint in Europe. Then from there, I got picked up by Capgemini in Munich. I worked there for a short while before HCL picked me up and then brought me into UK, where even HCL had the same job profile for me to develop the automotive market for them in Europe. So
all of this was Germany based.
So Satyam Computers initially sent me to Wiesbaden in Germany, where they had their German headquarters, which was basically heading Germany, Austria, Switzerland, what we call DACH region. So I was heading all the businesses in that area. From there, Wipro, they had the head office in Munich. So I moved to Munich. And again, I was looking after the automotive business in Europe for them, building it from scratch. In fact, most of these, they've had very little story in automotive in Europe. because Europe was as such still, very, very young as a market for many of these companies. So and then HCL, they picked me. So I'm there because of the personal circumstances where we were looking at moving into an English-speaking country because our daughter was like in a high school, like she was in the senior school, and we had to take a call whether she will study in Germany or we need to move to an English medium, English speaking country. And then it so happened that it worked out for us with HCL. HCL said, you choose the location. We decided to move to London. And then since then, last 14 years, we've been in London. So I spent about 8 years with HCL doing exactly the same thing, developing their automotive business. But that was more in the R&D division of HCL. So HCL has a very large, what they call engineering and R&D services group with about 30,000 people. So I was doing more work in the car, which was good technology, which was going into the car, and not necessarily the IT systems, which was running the automotive companies. So I was not working in the IT systems of BMW or where how they run their HR systems or how they run their production systems, how they run. But I was actually working on technology which was going into the embedded software of the car and subsequently, as you know, the automotive industry evolved into autonomous, connected, electric, shared. I mean, these are like some of the big areas where huge amount of investment has gone and huge amount of work has gone in. So it was.
So I've got this question for you there.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got 3 questions from what you just shared in the last 5 minutes. 2 of them we could probably, because we'll do an automotive case study at the end for our viewers, we could cover in there.
Yeah.
And my 2 questions on that is the evolution of cars from tech-enabled cars to actually having a car around a piece of tech, which is what I consider Tesla, which I drive, which is like, okay, there's a computer and there's something built around it. Yeah. I believe Huawei is also similar. Yeah. Computer companies, tech companies are now getting into car building rather than the other way around. So that's one. It sounds similar, but I think there are completely different approaches.
Yep.
And my other question on the car industry, and generally because you've got a German background and I'm sure you're still in touch with that economy overall, is I have heard that the German economy overall, but especially car industry and the driving engine of Europe is in quite some trouble subsequent to that whole Nord Stream being cut off, no gas, because a lot of that industry in Germany was built on the cheap Russian gas. So what are your thoughts on that? And maybe we can cover both of these when we do the automotive case study, because I've got one third question, which is about we rarely get people who've lived across 3 continents. So you've worked in India.
Yeah.
There are some cultural and general differences versus a Germany where you've lived. There's obviously a language thing, but overall culture, how would you compare that to, say, a London or a UK culture and India culture? So this is what I'd love to cover first. What is your view as someone who's worked across 3 components and continents and had kids grow up in 3 continents?
Yeah, I would say I've been very fortunate that I had that opportunity to experience working and living in 3 different countries, right? And 3 different countries where culturally, professionally, it has its own strong identities. I mean, even though at a business level, obviously we think in a very global way. I mean, we can operate anywhere in the world, but when it comes to living and interacting with the local businesses and trying to, particularly in a sales kind of a role where you're trying to penetrate a market where you don't have existing footprint or existing base. It's not easy. It's never easy. I mean, even just moving to a country like Germany from Chennai. I was in Chennai before I left India, and then suddenly moving into Germany, where it's very, very different in terms of the way business is done, the way you interact with people. I'll leave aside the challenges of language and other soft factors. But it is absolutely enlightening to have that opportunity to interact with them and work with them, and then to a large extent, have the confidence that you have been able to grow the business in a market like that from scratch. So it's a lot of it was kind of restarting my life when we relocated from Chennai so Chennai. We were very well established. I was already at a reasonably senior position. We had all of us, like my wife was also working there. She had a good job. I had a good job. And life was like, when life gets too comfortable, you want to do something which is what under the name of challenge, you kind of jump into a more difficult territory. That's exactly what we did. So we relocated from Chennai to Germany, and we moved, I think, towards winter was just about to start. So I saw my first snowfall when I reached there. And then it really hit us hard when because the Indian driving license was not valid in Germany, I didn't have the license to drive. I was actually, we were using public transport. I was moving around in buses. I was moving around in trains. Whereas in contrast to India, where we had 2 cars and we had, all the luxuries that typically you would think, like to have at a stage in life like that.
So Germany doesn't have like in the UK, for 1 year you can drive.
You can do it for 1 year if you are visiting. So you can, with international driving license, you can do that. But if you're living there, you're expected to have your own license.
Okay.
So, and
what was the year when you first moved to Germany then?
2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you reached Germany just when the winter was starting.
Yeah.
From Chennai, which as far as I remember, 25 degrees is when the monkey caps come out.
Absolutely. And the irony is, I'll tell you the sometimes you kind of question your decision of why did we take a decision, why did we make a move like that? We were absolutely comfortable leading a smooth life, and then we suddenly go and we start our lives from scratch. So we moved into a smaller place because it was more expensive. So we were actually living in a 1.5 bedroom kind of a house. We didn't have cars. We would go for shopping and bring the grocery in a bus, or we would walk. Imagine carrying these huge grocery bags in your hand and you have snow all over. We were like,
I have lived that life for a few years, Dev. So but I did that in an English-speaking country, thankfully. So you got like double the challenge.
They must have given you a big pay raise, right?
No, I had a good job. So I was head of Germany, Austria, Switzerland. It was a pretty good responsibility, but that didn't change in terms of how you live, right? You still can't drive. Still okay. I had a nice big office, but that didn't solve the problem.
Were you the first employee in Germany?
No. So they had a small office there. Okay. They had a small office there. And the size of business was not too big in Europe. In general, the overall business in Europe.
So what I want to know is, what did that first week look like? Because I don't think there was LinkedIn at that time.
No.
You show up as the head of this. They're probably Dotin or Indian Seva.
Yeah.
But how do you get that first meeting with someone who is mildly interested to give you a meeting?
That is tough. I can tell you that. It was quite.
So how did you break that barrier?
So it
because most of our audience is younger audience. Yeah. Most of this audience is okay. I show up now. What?
Yeah. So the thing is, obviously, because I came from automotive. For me, automotive was the easiest place to start, and if you look at, I had interacted with Germany in my previous jobs, more not in the same capacity. But I knew certain companies, had certain contacts, which were the first go-to, place to start the conversations or start the interactions. But then being part of a larger organization, right? So because the parent organization obviously had other clients also. So, and I was not limited to automotive in that role because I was head of the complete P&L for all business lines. So what I still remember the first 6 months, 1 year, we actually focused more on Switzerland because Switzerland language was less of an issue. It was, I would say, relatively more easy to get business than Germany because Germany, it takes time to build the relationship. And so obviously those very tactical things were evolving. And then obviously then you start interacting with companies, you get to know the people.
How does that start? Tell me again, does that start by going to industry conferences? You go out to the conferences, you hand out business cards, you get business cards, you come back to your desk and you start sending emails and start cold calling.
Yeah. So
how does it start?
So it's I would say multiple things you would do, right? So you would do some of the marketing, events. Obviously, we used to have CIO roundtables. We would organize. We used to take the help of the analysts. We would attend exhibitions, seminars. Go for talks. We would obviously leverage whatever relationship we had because I was not the only person who had contacts. There were other people who had. So we would probably begin from there, and then the cold calling bit of it starts happening as you start interacting and meeting people in events, and it's a very slow process. It's not there's nothing very, very quick over there.
There's no magic.
And I would work the whole day. I would be obviously sitting and doing the regular work. Evenings, I would go to Volkshochschule, which is like a language school. It's like a school where you learn different skills. So I used to I would sit and study with people who were like 20-year-olds who have just moved there as a student, and you would sit and literally study like a school kid. And I'd probably
study the German language.
So and obviously I had to travel. So half of the time I would miss my classes. I would be sheepish every time I have not done my homework. It's like, and this is when I was already in my 40s. So it was not that I was like in my 20s and I was like, I was literally rediscovering, redefining my life and my professional. And obviously I had a lot of pressure to prove myself because obviously they expect you to, show results. So it was a true challenge. And given that language also comes as a big hindrance, right? So luckily I had an office assistant. She was German. So she would accompany me for some of the meetings just to translate in case it is getting too difficult, just to ensure that. And obviously it helped in terms of, just having a more international, presence in a meeting room where you're representing a company which has got German employees as well as, non-German employees, for example. So all these factors, slowly you kind of get a grip on it, and then you develop relationship with. And so the beauty of Germany is like most of these companies are very international in terms of their business because they have a lot of them are international companies. They export a lot. They're also the senior management invariably speaks English. It's not that they don't, but it's not the language of comfort. So they, given a choice, they would rather not talk in German than not talk in English than otherwise. So as a sales guy, you would try and align yourself, try to give them the comfort that we are not someone who doesn't care for your culture, doesn't care for your language. So I made all those efforts to just, to ensure that they see that, the company is actually culturally sensitive and keen to, work the way the local companies work. So, but it was a tough phase. And today, I mean, if you look at, I'm in hindsight, right? It's probably one of the highly profitable markets in Europe for the company. And it is obviously it has so many Fortune 100 companies, so many Fortune 500 companies. Obviously, that has been at the center of most of the big IT conglomerates are having their clients based out of. I remember those days IBM had, I'm talking about those days, it's a long time, the numbers would have increased a lot. So Daimler and Volkswagen, both of them used to be $1 billion+ accounts for them. And I was not even in double digits in Germany, the double digit millions in Germany. So that was the kind of gap you had with the competition. So you have a company like IBM, which has got a single account like Daimler, which is $1 billion+ in sales of annual sales revenue. Whereas I don't have my total revenue is less than $10 million. So that's where you start from. And today, if you see, I mean, all these companies are competing with the likes of IBMs and Accentures and so on and so forth. So,
but Dave, tell us on the personal side. I mean, you've talked about language, you've talked about the weather. Obviously, that's a huge difference versus Chennai. But in terms of the people, not the language part, but are they welcoming of foreigners?
People. I mean, if you talk on generic terms, people say that it's difficult to break into their social circle. Yeah. Personally, we had a very, very good time in Germany. I would say that people-wise, they are absolutely amazing because they have very, very high, very, very, I would say, very, very good value system. It may take them some time to become friends, but once they become friends, I mean, they can be friends for life. They will invite you for barbecues. You'll go out on treks together. It's just that initially they are not sure of, who you are and what you are.
And is there a reasonably big Indian community in the city?
When we went, we were like, I think they were, so I moved into the place which had an international school. I mean, those days companies used to support, so at least the kids didn't have the challenge of language when they moved. Right. So wherever the international schools were, you would typically find a lot of expats, in and around in that area. And when I moved in, all our competitors, so that like people with similar profile, their kids would also go to the same school. So we were maybe 4 or 5 people with similar background, similar profession would be there. And you would, most likely you will be competitors. So you could be competitors in a daily setting, in an office setting. But when you're in the evenings, you would be sitting and drinking together as friends. You could be sitting with people from your competing companies because you don't have anybody else to initially talk to. I'm talking about the Indian community to start with. Yeah. We did have quite an active. The Indian High Commission was quite active. Indian Embassy. They used to have events in Diwalis and Holis and stuff like that, where again you get to meet some more people with. But it was a very, very small community compared to today. Today,
and you were mentioning schools for the kids. What kind of curriculum do the international schools follow? Like there are in different cities, like I know, like in Dubai, for instance, which is quite international. Yeah. Is they have Indian curriculum schools, they've got British curriculum, they've got American curriculum, and that too, even IB is a post curriculum.
So these schools, again, you have a mix, but where my daughter went to school was an IB school. So that was. I think it helped in some ways that they didn't have to, initially, and it also helps because if you're moving out of the country, it's easier if you're coming from an international school. Because if you studied in German, it becomes a little bit more difficult for them to adapt later on.
So Dev, because most of our audience is younger audience and they are, say, people are graduating, getting a job placement in Germany, or they worked with Infosys or Satyam or Wipro for a couple of years and now they're moving to Germany. What advice will you give them? If you could tell them 3 sentences.
I would say, it's a lot easier today than it was in the past, partly because of social media. I mean, you are very, very well connected even before you go there, right? So you're well connected. Cost of communication is negligible. I mean, those days we didn't have free calling,
WhatsApp.
right? So
Skype आया था.
you would actually spend a lot of money in just making calls to India or making calls international. So cost-wise, it has become much easier. And overall, the number of people who are currently working in all over Europe, all over the world, I would say, the number of professionals who are currently already working there, the numbers have increased significantly. I don't think it's going to be very difficult for anybody moving into any of these countries. And it won't be the same as South.
About it. Yeah. So we had we recently launched as IMB Alumni Association, the Continental Europe chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And then very quickly, there was like another chapter which came, which was like the Nordic chapter, which is different from Continental Europe. Because it was, and the minimum one needs is for there to be a quorum of people, at least. And technically, we need like 25 people who are willing to make a new chapter. I mean, 3 people launching a chapter is not really a chapter. And now we have a third chapter coming up in Europe. So, I mean, things are progressing so fast as I see from the Alumni Association front. It has to be people driven.
Absolutely. And we were talking about IIMs, right? I'm saying if you expand it outside IIM.
Having the forum, if you do pan IIM, I'm sure there are way more people than back when you moved there.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a global. We have become a lot more global. There's no doubt about it. The challenges of business, the challenges of adapting to a new country, it remains. I think it looks very glamorous from outside, but I think we know how challenging it is, at least in the first couple of years, till you have some kind of financial stability and some kind of understanding of where you stand in terms of living there. And I think even the spouses, they face it. So Germany, my wife used to work in India. When she moved to Germany, the spouses are not allowed to work for the first 2 years or 3 years, unlike UK where they can work at right from start. So that was also a big challenge because I mean it's not easy. So for how someone who's used to work and how do they move to a new country where you don't have friends, where you can't speak to people, things are culturally quite different. How that can. So I mean those are very very understated challenges that we face when we move into a country, and it takes some amount, not a some amount, quite a lot of effort to get to adapt to some of these.
So Dave, I hear you telling us that look, communication is much easier. Social media is there, so you feel connected to your family in India.
Yeah,
there's a larger body of expats in Europe now, but still, 3 advice kya doge?
So I would say if you're moving to a country, I mean, I started enjoying Germany a lot more when I knew the language. So
first advice,
learn the language. First of all, having an open mind to not force, in that, okay, in India, I was doing something like this, I will continue to do like that. I think it's good to have an open mind and embrace, the culture, the place, the language that you're experiencing.
And if you're married, would you suggest to leave the wife behind for some time? So because
we'll have to this house.
It's not actually exotic, right? Because we're not pale, white, skin color.
They give us the on the record answer, and then we will pause it and give us the off the record.
No, the thing is, it is challenging for the spouse, and I know people where the wife has moved because she has got a job, and the husband is not working. So there are a lot of cases like that also. And it's equally difficult for them. It's not that it's any better. So
one, learn the language. Second, leave wife behind. What's the third one?
Yeah, and then I would say that of course initially when I moved in, financially it was challenging. It was not that I had a lot of savings that I could go on holidays.
So you'd be surprised, even for people who are getting jobs in the UK from IIM recent grads, they are saving more money if they continue to work in India compared to if they get a promotion and they move to UK.
Yeah,
that's the thing, 30% tax or whatever, 35% tax versus nearly 50% tax at these salary levels. 50% the government takes, and then cost of housing, the rental is huge out here.
True. That's true.
I mean, as you can see, we've moved here. I mean, we are paying more than $3,000, 3,000, more than 3,000 to like just have a house to per month. I mean, India mein agar maine itna paisa kar diya by conversion, and by the way, salaries in India at certain levels, in certain professions, are higher or at least the same by direct conversion of the pound or the euro. So it's not lower. Now, if you say that महीने का 3 लाख में क्या आलिशान मैंशन मिलेगा इंडिया में, बॉम्बे में मिलेगा, पाली हिल पे आलिशान मैंशन मिलेगा आपको 3 लाख पर मंथ में.
That's true. I think, but you know, I would abstain from comparing everything. You know, I think you have to let go of comparison when you're. I think you have to look at a lot. One is that the fact that you are living, you know, the experience, the value of experiencing another world, another part of the world, I think is very, very. I think if I look at how I am today versus how I was maybe 20 years ago, the way I think, the way I look at the world, I mean, I am definitely very. Sorry?
Your exposure has changed.
Absolutely. And the way you think, the way you look at it, you know, the confidence level that I have today in terms of, I mean, I can be at par with anywhere in the world you put me. I know I can survive, I can do well. It's like that. You know, that's the kind of confidence you get once you have gone through this whole grind of, you know, starting from you know, going through the grind of settling in a different.
Yeah, you know, like a diamond, when it comes out of the mine, it actually doesn't shine. It needs to go through the grind to shine. It's
Absolutely.
कहावत ही नहीं है तो fact है. मगर diamond mine से चमकता हुआ नहीं निकलता.
Absolutely.
In fact, Dev, I completely identify with, because I did a second MBA. I had the luxury of coming to an English-speaking country rather than the language differences. But at 32, and when I graduated, I was nearly 34. And then I started from scratch, pretty much in the career, because you're a fresh MBA. थोड़ा सा लोग दे देते हैं leave. But then not like 10 years of your life. You know, you're still going to work through the whole thing, especially if you're changing some industry, sector, this and that. And people say, okay. And I'll share one more thing. The first job I got here, which started as a summer internship and then morphed into like a full-time kind of role, and I worked there for nearly a year.
Literally made their whole model and changed how they went.
Before that, it was like, I was like literally associate level after working for nearly a decade in India. And the reason I'm mentioning that is, as an associate, in private equity, associate is like you won't get to be a director on the board of the companies that the fund owns, but you will still be an advisor and attend all board meetings. And so there's pretty much senior level responsibilities, even as an associate. And half of our portfolio, which I was on the board of, were German companies. So this PE fund that I worked for was half German, half English portfolio. And that's when I realized it was senior management. Although you were saying that senior management know a bit of English, absolutely not their comfortable language. They speak very broken English. So I learned over that.
And they're very conscious about it also. Germans are very conscious that they don't know English.
So, and they're not apologetic about it. Let's put it that way. But at the same time, they are practical enough to want to, because they know, okay, here's this guy, isko to German aati nahi hai, humko thodi bahut English aati hai. Over those 8 or 10 months that I worked with some of these portfolio companies ke CEOs and CFOs, I also did a bit of like online. Us time pe Rosetta Stone used to be, they got some CDs. So by the end of it, I was speaking broken German, they were speaking broken English, but we were all professional enough. And that's what I respect. Is they were professional enough to not hold it against me. they knew that we have to get the work done. This is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see, and the reason I'm mentioning is I see some cultures. There are some cultures, some within Europe and some outside Europe, where people aren't that open about language and or welcoming that this guy doesn't know our language. So it's a big cultural barrier.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, language is the foundation of cultural difference. I mean, even in India, and we grew up in India, so we recognize that.
Yeah.
You go to Mumbai for the first time, half the people, okay, Marathi is similar to Hindi, so you can get around. But if you don't know Marathi, you don't get in the cultural
Language and food.
Yeah.
Language and food is what.
And things like that.
So, Dev, I think it is well established that you know more about the automotive industry than any IIM professor, okay?
I am not sure about that, but yeah, I mean,
But I am sure about
I've
that.
lived.
You have graduated way before me, so let me guarantee you that you know more about than any other.
Yeah.
We also know that the Indian economy is currently at 4 trillion and it's going to go to 50 trillion in the next 30 years. It's going to grow explosively. It's going to be one of the largest growing economies in the world. Automotive is going to be a big sector.
Yeah.
So we could not think of anyone else that we could bring on this show to help our viewers understand the automotive industry.
Yeah.
Like, these are people who want to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
These are people who are thinking कि यार इंडिया में बहुत गाड़ियां बिकेंगी तो मैं टायर बना सकता हूँ, मैं नट बना सकता हूँ, मैं ब्रेक बना सकता हूँ. This can be even people working in big automotive companies. What does that future look like? It might be students जिनके पास 2 जॉब ऑफर्स है, एक कंसल्टिंग कंपनी का जॉब ऑफर है, एक टाटा मोटर्स का जॉब ऑफर है.
Yeah.
So, can you give us a understanding of what does the Indian automotive industry today look like? First question. And second, what do you expect in the short term, medium term, and the long term for the Indian automotive industry?
Okay. So let me first talk about the automotive industry per se, right? So automotive industry on its own has been, I mean, over hundreds of years, it has always been a very, very integral part of the GDP, right? So there are certain sectors of the industry which kind of play a very important role in, because it has a lot of derived demand also. Even the IT companies, they get shaken up if the manufacturing sector is slowing down, because ultimately the systems are required to be built for the end customers, right? So, I mean, you are ultimately you are actually catering to a power company, you are catering to a telecom company, you are catering to an automotive company, and typically, I would say 3 to 5%, or maybe even higher in some economies, of the GDP is kind of contributed by the auto sector. So you can't ignore it. It is there to stay. I mean, even though there is a lot of, I would say, people are becoming more and more conscious about environment, and they want to cut down, the number of vehicles. They want to move to electric. All those things. The reshaping of the industry is definitely happening, and it will continue to happen in terms of what kind of fuel you're using, what's likely to be the future, way of travel, mode of travel, etc. Would shared mobility become more important going forward? Because I see a lot of the young people, they don't want to even own a car. Like my daughter is not very keen to own a car. She would rather go and use a zip car or
Transport or
shared vehicle than, not because they can't afford it. It's because they are like becoming more conscious about that. Why should I? India, now coming back to India, I mean, India is a huge market on its own, right? Forget India being a base in terms of supplying to rest of the world, as an export market. On its own, it's still, if you look at the per capita car for the population, it's still, the numbers are very, very low compared to what it is there in the West. And
I think even China, I saw some numbers just yesterday that Indian auto industry has grown like 10 times or 20 times in the last 5 or 10 years. But even right now, it is like 1/10 of China or 1/5 of China in that region.
Yeah. So China is already the world's largest automotive market, right? So it has superseded America few years ago. And again, China population-wise, they have got a very huge demand internally. At the same time, China being very, very strong in the manufacturing compared to India in terms of as a base for manufacturing, where obviously India is trying to compete in that space. I think India is kind of getting held back, was not right now, but was getting held back partly because the infrastructure was not as good as, what you see in some of the other economies, other bigger economies. But now the road conditions have improved. I think affordability has increased. So the numbers are definitely on the rise, and it still has a huge room to grow, provided the cities can absorb that kind of growth. Provided, because our problem is going to be less of affordability, but more about the environment in which we are operating. And you look at Bangalore, you look at Bombay, you look at it is not that comfortable, not that easy when it comes to moving around within the city by car. So those things will hold back. But in terms of brands, in terms of international attraction, where companies, everybody wants to be part of the growth story when it comes to automotive. In terms of the know-how of the technology, you will be surprised. All the big companies of the world, their main team when it comes to IT and engineering services, most of the teams today operate out of India. And I know so many companies where they're reducing the size of their operations in US or in Europe, and they are just increasing the size of the team in India. So India is...
Why is that? So is it cost? Is it talent?
It's a combination of all. So cost is a factor. Scalability in India is much better than what you can scale up with, because it's not easy to find so many people to do the job. The amount of software which is going into the car today is absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, if you look at what we call the software-defined vehicles, exactly what I think, because you were talking about in terms of, what's happening, that cars are now more, in fact, Manish, you were also mentioning that the cars are now being built around the computer itself, as a computer. So that whole shift of thinking has happened. It's already there. I mean, software-defined vehicles are the latest so-called jargon which everybody talks about in the industry, and how it is going to shape the way the cars are built, the way the cars are maintained, the way the cars are going to operate in future. India is definitely a very, and you'll be surprised how that India has some of the amazing people who are probably working on the most cutting edge features of the world cars, but they may not be using it, but they are sitting in their offices and actually writing the code for that. And I've had experiences, my personal experiences, where people who are coding out of India, they may have never seen, or they may have never driven a particular, like forward collision detection system, for example. None of the cars that they have ever driven will have that feature, probably. They have never seen that in action on the Indian roads, but they are actually coding it for a high-end European OEM or a high-end American OEM.
So it's very interesting. Instead of thinking of exporting tires, which then gets installed in the car that's sold in Europe, we are exporting the software that gets installed in the car that's sold in Europe.
Yeah, that's already happening. I mean, that's happening for the last 20 years, I would say. So knowledge export is already happening in terms of the kind of work that is being done in India today in automotive space. It's mind-boggling. Of course, the amount of investments the companies, OEMs probably make. So what's happening is that a lot of the international companies, they are still keeping the core technology, the core know-how close to where the headquarters is. But there are a lot of other features, other functionalities, which has to be done at scale, which requires, like, suppose you're doing testing of all the integration of all the softwares in the vehicle, for example, which requires, say, 1,000 people team. That they will move it without any doubt to the team in India. But if they are working on hydrogen fuel, for example, they will not probably take that research work into India yet. I mean, that's also changing. I know a lot of the CIOs and the CTOs of global companies, initially, a lot of the American companies, they moved their CTOs and CIOs to Europe because Europe was, again, I know a lot of them were operating out in Germany. Now I find a lot of them are moving away from Germany and they're located in India.
So they're moving the CIOs and CTOs to it.
Yes. So I know some of the companies where the head of IT, the head of R&D is actually operating from India.
So would you like to share some names?
For example, Visteon, for example. So, there are many companies. There are many companies which are in that category. And the trend is only increasing. More and more companies are actually expanding their teams in India and cutting down their operations in European or American center. So India is in a very, very sweet spot right now. I think what I sometimes miss, or where I feel probably we should try and do a better job, is I find a lot of senior technical people, they kind of move away from technology and want to get more into the management of it. So they want to be program managers. They want to be, they're more keen to go away from tech, and they don't want to be, unlike what I see in Germany, or unlike what I see in some of the other countries where you could be, like I work with somebody in Germany, which works for one of the global tier 1 companies. That person is, for the last 25 years, that person, I mean, he's probably, his designation is not very fancy, but he is working on the most cutting edge technology as far as automotive is concerned. I'm sure he's getting paid very well, at par with probably what his colleagues in management would be getting paid. But he loves his area so much, his field of technology so much, that he doesn't want to get into general management. That profile is actually missing in India. I feel the moment we spend 10 years in coding, we want to get out of it and we want to get into managing teams and managing people.
Yes.
That's
I think we were talking about the importance of culture. And I think one thing someone with so much experience is saying, and I hope this message reaches all the automotive engineers, that there's pride in remaining an engineer.
And valuing the depth of knowledge, because it's not easy to create the depth of knowledge.
Yes.
So I think that's, of course, it's partly this organizations, they need to have technical streams and management streams, how you compensate them, how you reward them. I mean, those are things which obviously require some restructuring and a realignment of how you encourage depth of knowledge in an organization. I think that's something I think a lot of Indian companies probably need to look at also. But so that is, so depth, I would say I would like to see more depth. There are soft skills where I think we still need to improve to some extent. So there are a lot of soft skills in terms of communication, in terms of punctuality. I still find it as an issue. I think it's a cultural thing, which is very, very different. And I'm particularly, in Germany, you can't imagine being late for meetings, or it's just not done. These are like, you don't even have to state it. It's a given. That it's become better. So companies which are in international business, they are definitely they're better. But in general, the soft factors like punctuality, even things like how we present a document, for example. These are, these are how, even simple things like spellings. We take certain things for granted, or we don't value it so much, but it matters. How the finished document looks, is important. If you want to really play at the global level, I think even sometimes we make a joke out of it that why should you worry about the font? Why should you worry about the spelling? But it matters. In real life, it matters.
Yeah.
So I think those things, those soft factors still need to, when a document comes from India by a team from India, it needs to, I think some of these factors need to be, better than what probably, and again, I'm generalizing. I'm sure there are many companies who are absolutely fantastic, but in general, we come across, challenges which are maybe more acceptable in some circumstances, but I would, if I have to compete with the best of the best in the world, I would definitely try to improve upon that.
So tell me this, suppose if a fresh MBA grad, somebody who has graduated MBA, he may have had some work experience before he went into MBA and he wants to be an entrepreneur. What opportunities are worth exploring in the automotive sector?
Oh, amazing. I think, in fact, I'm interestingly, I'm writing a book called Money on Wheels, which I've been on it for a few years already. And, I love
the title, Money on Wheels.
Money on Wheels.
And I think we'll call this episode the Money on Wheels. It'll get blockbuster views.
So what that whole book is centered around is that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started my career, automotive sector was still dominated by very, very large corporates. Because of convergence of technology in automotive, right? So automotive is no longer automotive alone. It is telecom, it's FMCG, it is consumer electronics, you have got medical devices getting into it, which can monitor your, it's a completely different world right now when it comes to automotive. And what has happened is that, so I'm talking about meetings with BMW. I'm talking about, where I've sat in meetings, and the so-called veterans in BMW, they are worried about how they can cope with all these variations and varieties of new technologies that are coming into the car. And they cannot have all the experts within their own organization. So what has happened in the last 10 years is that lot of very small but very specialized companies, which is able to do a particular thing very well, they have started becoming extremely important for these big companies. And earlier, they used to have a lot of restrictions that unless you are of a specific size, unless your financial, status is of a certain level, you cannot become our vendors. You cannot become our suppliers. You have to be a reasonably large company with a large track record before you can, approach us as becoming a supplier. It's no longer true. You can be a 20 people company and you could be working directly for Daimler, directly for BMW, directly for JLR, just because you are working on something which they don't know. So
what can that be? Can a startup in Bangalore specialize in car seats?
Yeah. I work with a company right now. Of course, they're doing more aircraft seats to start with. And it started as a 30 people company out of, so they had one operation in Noida and another in Bangalore. They have about 50 people right now. And they are currently, the kind of work they do, they can probably contribute to any of the OEMs in the world. And we have had some interaction. We are talking about VTOLs, right? So vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, which are like flying cars. So there you need to have it. What has happened, you need skills of both aerospace and automotive, and you have to blend some of these technologies together for operating some of these features. Those you can't find many companies which can do both, for example. Or you can't find many individuals. So you need to have a mix of people coming with some aerospace background and automotive background and being part of the same team, for example. So you have such opportunities emerging in the field for, whether it is electronics, whether it is safety, whether it is, I don't know. You pick a part of the car, any part of the car, and you will find an opportunity sitting there for a company.
So you pick the headlights and say that I'm going to become an expert in headlights, and I'm going to.
You can. Good example is look at the headlamps today in cars. How different it has become from what it was 10 years ago. You just look at the shapes. You look at the kind of technology they are using behind to operate those lamps. I think Tesla has got a feature where one Tesla, if it sees another Tesla, if you have enabled that feature, it will honk to the other vehicle, right? It's like a vehicle-to-vehicle communication happening. Somebody needs to have that expertise to be able to, have expertise in cloud, expertise in V2V, V2X. I don't know. It's endless. The opportunities are endless. And you don't have to do everything. You could just be doing one small part of, but the vehicle needs it. The team needs it, and if just to back up my point. So if you go to BMW's site, you will find they have something called BMW Startup Garage.com. There's a separate section which is actually.
Thank you for pointing it out. I didn't know that there was a BMW startup.
Yeah, if you just go to Google and see, there is a BMW startup.
The episode is Money on Wheels, BMW Startup Garage.com.
So BMW Startup Garage.com is actually if you have an idea and you just go and tell. So there's a team of experts in BMW. They are just asking people to come with ideas or whatever they have created and talk to them. Wow. And if they find it interesting, they may invest. If they are not investing, they may still buy from you. And it was unheard of and this is not just BMW. Most of the OEMs have got schemes like that now.
And I think this is not just restricted to automobile. Right now, most corporates have realized that there is a lot of talent and innovation across not internal, but external.
Yeah.
So people are doing corporate ventures a lot. People are doing these venture incubators a lot, and even just doing or getting people in as freelancers rather than employees. For the innovation is important, and I think this kind of the first one that I remember did it at a reasonable scale, and this was back in my FMCG days. Was Procter and Gamble? They did even before the phrase was coined, or maybe they coined the phrase of crowdsourcing. In FMCG. And I still remember that because I was a marketing person back then. I think in my heart, I'm probably still a marketing person, but I don't do that for a living anymore. Which brings me to your key point about convergence, about all this innovation happening outside and cars and vehicles, not just being only the only the structure or the transport thing that we have known for the last 100 years, but being a convergence of technology and doing everything, including probably for the driver, if you're holding the wheel. I think you hinted at that, was having heart monitors and all that. Is like, are you feeling more stressed and things like that? Yeah. So is that why we are seeing a lot of, and Tesla did it beautifully, which is why I call Tesla a technology company with a car built around it. Huawei, I don't know how to pronounce that. They have done it. But what's your thought about the Apple car project? 10 years, Steve Jobs started it in more than a decade ago, and they just shut shop. I think it was called, what was it called? Titan, Project Titan? Is that?
Yeah, see, you can't take away the strength that 100-year-old company has, whether it's Daimler, whether it's Toyota, whether it's General Motors, Ford. Making 1,000 cars, making 10,000 cars is still manageable. But when you have to make 10 million cars per year, it's no longer the same game. what's happening right now, a lot of the new companies, the new age companies, are actually still, they have not reached the level where the real big global automotive companies are. And it's not even for technology. Huh?
I believe Tesla is like their largest market is China, and they're like, although it is reducing now with all these Chinese EVs, but Tesla is still a pretty big market share in China, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can't compare it with the conventional car companies, right? But, I mean, no way. I mean, we are talking about, I mean, their market cap is higher because the company, people like it as a share value of the company. But I mean, they don't have the same kind of size, the way they can, like the way an assembly line can be run by Daimler, for example. I mean, Tesla will take a long time to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. No, you're right. And in fact, right in my house, so I've got two cars. We've got a recent Tesla. I say recent, it's still a year and a half old. And I've got a 14-year-old Jaguar, which the day we got the new Tesla, and versus my, at that time, 13-year-old Jaguar, which in the MOT, they were saying your suspension is just about all right. It's passing our MOT levels, but you need to get it fixed. My Jaguar has better suspension and on speed bumps or whatever than mine.
New Tesla.
First day Tesla. New Tesla. And I mean, but at the same time, it doesn't have those electronics, partly because it's 14-year-old. And back then the technology wasn't there. But more importantly, it's like everything is, I believe I read something about Ford, is because every technology is a different supplier, different OEM. But Tesla has done it like centralized. So this is the technology. And then now you build the car around it, which is, keep going back, is it's all centralized. Everything is centralized rather than every manufacturer making their own tech to fit into the car. So the window manufacturer having a window tech and the starting motor technology OEM has their own tech, and then someone is sitting in the middle and then overloading the car with all the APIs.
No, the car industry has, I think, is in one of its most exciting phase ever in the history of, partly because of what's going on with all the new technologies that's coming in. There is a lot which we will figure out downstream. I mean, it's still early stages of to understand how some of these things will behave. Even simple things like the resale value of electric cars. We have not yet reached a stage where we really know what we will get back or what the resale value will be compared to what the petrol or the diesel engine vehicles are.
So Dave, on this, just to round off this case study, so a lot of IIM aspirants and current students and recent alumni watch our show. If they were to be hired on placements or lateral entry into one of these car companies, say a Maruti or a Tata Motors or a Hyundai, what are the top 3 tips you would give to a fresh MBA or a current student for their interview? What are the things they should be on top of?
So I think one is to be aware of the trends. So one is at a very high level. That high level is what we talk about. We call it, the acronym we use in the industry is CASE, CASE, right? So it's connected, automotive, autonomous, shared, and electric. Each of these, so what's going on in this? What are the challenges that the industry is facing? How they are overcoming? How they are, but some of the inherent issues that the industry faces right now, and particularly for MBAs who are coming and who have a lot of choice in terms of where they can go after an MBA from a school like IIM, for example. The car industry, money-wise, will still struggle to compete, which means like someone like me who has still stuck with this sector, but I kind of found a good blend between, a software career blended with automotive career kind of I I've forced it on myself. I mean, if I really wanted it to, free flow and just go after the money side of it, I would have probably had to compromise on the vertical experience. You have to move away from too much specialization if you want to, really go up the ladder. But that's a personal choice, right? So for someone who's thinking of a career, like suppose I have a very, very good engineering base, engineering background, and then I've done an MBA, and I love engineering and I want to stay with manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. You need to have that soft corner for this industry, which should override the fact that somebody else who's in consulting and they are getting more money part. I think you have to look at it very objectively as to what gives you enjoyment in terms of, the work that you do versus what chasing just the salary part of it. That I think is one hindrance, which even in campus, and I'll compare it like when in my engineering college, the automotive companies were first day company. Like Tata was like the first day company, very, very priced job. At IIM, it was, I think, a fifth day company, sixth day company, because the salary was nowhere close to what the banks were giving or the consulting companies were giving or some of the IT companies were giving. So you have to keep some of these things at the back of your mind. In terms of excitement of technology, in terms of the kind of work that you can do, the kind of exposure you can get globally, I think it's a very, very interesting field. And people who love cars, I think for them, it's one of the best time to get into this industry. Because it's like an open slate. It can, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that you can do. There's a lot that you can shape in terms of, how the business grows. And it will continue to be an important sector. I don't see, like you earlier talked about, is Germany facing any challenge on that front? I mean, these are more like blips, I would call it. They're not necessarily, going to affect their course. I mean, they have been through world wars. They've been through much more serious situations in the past, and they've survived. I mean, these companies are 100+ years old companies, right? So I don't think you can shake up the fundamentals of the need for mobility. Like obviously, we will continue to have some form of mobility. The base technology may change. It may electric, may move to hydrogen, may move to fuel cells, whatever. That doesn't matter. I mean, that's just, but it is something which, like for me, it has been the love of the industry, which has kind of, pulled me, and in a positive way and like in a negative way, that I didn't let it go when I should have let it go at some point if I wanted to, achieve other objectives. So for a fresh grad, a lot of opportunities, get to know I think understanding the challenges also, because the world power in the auto sector has shifted. It used to be like, if you see, just take 50-year snapshot, Japan was very, very dominant. From Japan, it moved to America. From America, it's moved to China. I won't be surprised if a lot of it will start shifting towards India, because it's a very natural.
But Dave, you didn't mention Germany in that.
Oh, okay, yeah. Germany also. Germany was
the perennial number twos.
Yeah, so Germany was also. I mean, it is. So Germany continues to be an important hub, right? If you look at their economy, probably automotive continues to be one of the important pillars of their economy, unlike US or unlike maybe some of the other countries. So,
and Korea.
These are all emerging. So these are all emerging, important emerging automotive. Even Vietnam, I'm dealing with companies out of Vietnam, which was nowhere in the picture earlier. I mean, they are trying to compete in the global stage with some of the brands, which is very, very. It was surprising interaction from my perspective, because
even for me, I've never heard of Vietnam in the same breath as car industry or.
But they're all getting into the space because the industry has got, there's so many new entrants coming in. There's so many new things happening. that the old bastions have kind of lost their hold on the market. So you'll find a new brand. I saw it in California. In fact, what's that new car which is very fancy, much better more popular than Tesla right now? Which I forget.
You should have asked. Yeah.
I would say it's like if you can come up with a car with amazing features, functionalities, I mean, people will go for it. And I'm talking about they are more in the premium, super specialized car segment, like what Aston Martin is, or what Bentley is, or what a Maserati is. I mean, they don't sell by numbers, right? They sell more by what they created as specific opportunities. But it's India has already has seen a lot of change. I don't know if it can compete in the same breath as maybe the IT sector, or in terms of the kind of revenue it generates for or GDP it generates for the country. But it will continue to grow, and it'll continue to be important. Partly because a lot of the tech work will get done out of India.
I mean, I can if I put the pieces that you've said together, is I think India is at an inflection point, in my opinion, on a number of sectors in the economy. And manufacturing, like you said, manufacturing is always the core of the economy, and without manufacturing, just all these other ancillary sectors, they can't run.
Correct.
Even before cars, there's the highway sector and the infrastructure sector, and then on top of that is the manufacturing sector that's built up. And on top of that is all the tech and services sectors that get built up.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you said, which I've had this thought, but you've put it very succinctly, is the convergence between tech and manufacturing that's happening across sectors, but especially in automotive.
Yeah.
That's hugely important. And for a new graduate, the way I see it, if I were a new graduate, the learning I'm taking here is I could be a tech guy with a love for cars. I don't need to be on the shop floor all the time. You've made that switch. I could specialize in automotive in a tech company, or I could specialize in the tech part of an automotive major and still make a career out of it, rather than thinking automotive is shop floor pe to jana hi padega. And then the third thing which you said, which I slightly disagree with, is but I agree with in the short and medium term, is when you over specialize, then short and medium term, it's very difficult to move around.
Yeah.
And it's true for liquidity. Your liquidity is so low that how will you even move around?
I agree.
But once you reach beyond middle or senior level, then you're probably the only one person. Your liquidity is still low.
Yeah.
But because of that, if someone is looking for that spec, you can demand whatever. They will pay through their nose if it comes to that.
No, I think that's a very, very, it's a personal choice, I would say. Because I mean, as MBAs, we are trained to be generalists, right? The main thing that we learn in MBA, at least what I learned, is about the importance of all the other departments in the company. Earlier as an engineer, you thought everything is revolving around engineering and manufacturing, but suddenly you realize finance is as important as HR, as important as sales, as important as purchasing. I mean, you can't have a good organization unless all the pieces work together. And that only you learn when you look at it as a general manager. If you're not a general management person, if you're very biased as I'm only going to think in terms of HR, I mean, you can't be, you can't do a lot of good to the company. So, I mean,
in fact, I'll stick my neck out, and Viks isn't here because he has a diametrically opposite view on it. Which is that, and this is probably Silicon Valley startup world experience, that people frown on MBAs in that part of the world.
Yeah.
That you can, you'll just be doing X, Y, Z. But in my opinion, and this is my view, is I think MBAs make the best startup founders, because what does a founder need to do? He needs to do a bit of everything. He needs to know the tech. Or she. He or she needs to know the tech, needs to know some finances, how to manage cash flow, needs to know a bit of marketing, have to sell to customers, initial customers. Jack of all trades. You have to be jack of all trades. And I think MBA is the best jack of all trades in the world.
Yeah, and MBAs teach you to be entrepreneurs, right? So we are trained actually to think like an entrepreneur. So I agree with you. And what you're saying is absolutely right. But in a large corporation, the equation changes.
Yes.
In a large corporation, it works different because then you look at specialists differently from generalists when it comes to managing a large company. Because you don't want a very specialized, which is again very different in Germany. In Germany, you'll find if you look at the board members, half of them will be doctors, PhD doctors. Because that economy, that the way the organizations also kind of, they like to have a lot of super specialized people on the board, which is not necessarily the case in US probably. It's a different kind of approach to how you run companies and how you manage companies. I think it's partly how the education system is, and how people are, the way people think, right? So it varies from country to country and so on and so forth.
Perfect. I think that, Dev, that was like a very succinct analysis, especially for our viewers, fresh graduates or current students, how to and why to get into the automotive industry, and why not to also, if it doesn't match their choices in life. Yeah. And I think now, this is the part that in our conversation, we spent a lot of time so far, but the part that I was looking forward is, what next for Dev? What are you doing right now? You've done millions of years, sorry, not millions, but a few decades in the automotive industry and in the automotive part of the tech industry. Yeah. What are you doing right now, both on the personal front, professional front? And I'm saying professional front from a pure corporate/career perspective. But I think, like we were talking about convergence, in a lot of industries, I think personal and professional, there is a convergence increasingly in lifestyle for people, even of our generation, and definitely in the new generation that's coming.
Yeah.
So let's get on to probably the best part of that we've been waiting for. So Dev, that's the best segue. What is Dev's future? What is your current and future?
So let me talk about what's happening today or currently. So we talked about my whole previous experience till I was working for very large corporates, multi-billion-dollar corporations, part of a management team responsible for targets, numbers, etc., etc. Where you're
using that in the past tense. So have you stopped that? And when did you stop that?
So 2018, which is 5 years ago, and I'm surprised that 5 years have gone. Sometimes I don't realize that so much time has gone. So I had reached a stage in life where I had some stability, and my responsibilities had so my daughter was, she was kind of set as far as her education is concerned. And so it was time for me to do what I really wanted to do. And that had like two distinct parts. One is something which will earn me the day-to-day living, which was related to my work. But I wanted to work on my terms, my way, on things that I liked. So I set up a company called Global Tech Catalysts in 2018, focusing only on niche technologies. So I decided that I will work in technologies which I like, which is exciting. And of course, naturally, it had a leaning towards automotive because that's what I've spent most of my years in my corporate life. And basically, then I had a little bit of philanthropic thing in my mind that, okay, I've done a lot for myself. I'm reasonably happy with where I am, what I've done. It's time to give back, which is a good thought, but if financially is not that easy.
I know.
So philanthropy and making money always doesn't go along that well. I don't know. I may be wrong, but that's how it is right now.
No, it is always there. And I've been through that phase, and I went through that about a decade ago.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, I want to do something good.
Yeah.
And what I knew back then was how to invest. And I know it's a very popular, commonly used term right now in 2024 called impact investing. But in 2015, when I made the move from what's called traditional investing to impact investing, it's like I had to explain to people impact investing means this. And then people, I still have to answer that question. And it's a common industry question. It's like, okay, does the investing part come first or does the impact part come first, and which is precedent? And my answer, and this is what I believe in, was always and still is that if the two don't marry, if the two don't go hand in hand, lockstep, whatever other fancy word you want to use, if one doesn't lead to the other, then that's not what I want to invest. Because if they are taking away from the other, then it's not impact investing. Then it's commercial with philanthropy. Rather than where creating more impact leads to a better financial return, and creating more financial return can only come if you're creating more impact.
Yeah,
I've been there. It doesn't pay at all. That industry doesn't pay. Even within the investing world, it doesn't pay. So except if you're working for Soros, then that impact investing, they're paying higher than industry salaries, and maybe for a reason.
So what I'm doing now is I had a target of helping 25 companies who are really good, not very big, so small to typically 25 to say 300, 400 people companies, could be located anywhere in the world, but obviously the leaning was higher on India because of my network and my connections and all that. And these could be typically mainly services. So I've not got into physical product side because logistically I find it difficult to manage. So services is easy, it's more virtual, everything is. So I have handpicked companies that I work with. So I get to choose because it's my own companies. I can decide, which technologies I want to work with whom I want to work with, which company I think has good potential to grow and benefit from the. So like I was at the beginning, I was saying that I've got certain specializations that I've built over my whole career. Or the one is the depth that I have on the European market. Secondly is the industry specialization that I have, which is automotive / manufacturing, because manufacturing has a lot of commonality with what automotive does. And the third is that I am kind of spent most of my career creating business. I'm more a creator of new business than someone who just runs existing business.
And you created new businesses when you came to Europe.
For every company. So all my jobs, every job, whether it was, except Tata's, which was obviously, it was an established role. There I was managing, basically was a new product vendor development work. But I was responsible for creating the European export market. Ford, it was a new company, new setup. So I was actually responsible was to get new business for the company in India. Then I moved to Europe. It was basically setting up the automotive business for them. Wipro was automotive business for them. HCL was automotive business, where they had very, very small business to start with. And my job was I always started as one man. So I was not like, starting off with as a big team. Even though I was at a senior level, I was always like a soul hunter, as you would call it. And
so Dave, if someone saw your CV or your LinkedIn profile, it would feel that till 2018, this guy has only worked for big corporate. He's like a corporate kind of a comfortable job, AC mein baith ke job karne wala with 20 people reporting or 200 people reporting into him. But you've had that startup thing since at least the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
You've always
the last 5 jobs, in fact, even prior to my last 5 jobs was nothing else but building. Only difference is that I was doing it on behalf of a large company. So I had no travel restraints. You had a big brand to support you. So those advantages were there, which is not there since I started my own company doing the same thing. But
I'm curious, Dave, because of this, at least in my world, in the venture capital world, I mentioned corporate VCs.
Yeah.
Why didn't you do a corporate VC for one of these BMWs or something? You should be leading something like that. Or maybe you're in conversations for that.
Yeah, the thing is, I still like to do more than one thing. Probably that is something which is like, I don't want to get locked into just one company, doing just one thing. Maybe that's because then you kind of restrict in terms of what else you can do. Whereas right now, I work with probably some of the most exciting technologies that's exciting that so I work, and it extends beyond automotive today. I went and attended the space event, met up with a lot of, new space related companies. I work in defense. I work in medical devices. It's the only problem I see is that probably I'm tending to spread myself too thin, which is, I think you have to, you can't do everything, right? So, but it's still in the same space. So based on which company I'm helping to expand the business into Europe. And if they are, so like there's one company which specializes in drone detection technology, for example. So, it's an industry which is alien to me, was alien to me, but once I got involved, obviously, I've met so many European companies in that field, prospected businesses for them, etc., etc. But
the basics are the same, aren't they, Dev? The basics are the same.
Yeah.
Finally, it's like a vehicle, autonomous vehicle, UAV, rocket in space. It's finally a vehicle, and where it operates, whether on a road or in the air or outside the atmosphere, it's still the same.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, the companies some of the companies I was mentioning, right? So they make the landing gears for the RLV, the relaunchable. The ISRO had this something similar to SpaceX. So they actually sent an unmanned rocket into space, and then that was supposed to come back and land. So the landing gear for that was designed by one of the companies I worked with, for example. Now the same landing gear is also applicable to a flying car, because a flying car also needs to have a landing mechanism when it lands after it has taken off. So there's a company called Aeromobile in Slovakia, which is a company which I've worked in the sense, have had business interactions with. So they also need the same technology, like you said, right? So whether it is as a city taxi, whether it is for space, or whether it is actually for drones, which say the defense is using, for example. So it's the landing gear technology is similar. Maybe it requires some adaptation based on the flying condition and all that. So, but it's definitely very exciting when you work in that. Then suddenly you have another company which does, augmented reality based remote maintenance of machines, right? So all these smart factories, you want people to be wearing those real wear glasses, with those fancy glasses, and they are able to talk to the expert in Canada, sitting in Germany with it's really, really high tech stuff. And it's exciting. When you even present to a client, you get excited with what you're seeing in terms of what can be done, right? So, but these are all, again, when you're selling a new technology, it's not easy, getting new clients, getting paid, a lot of it starts with a POC, you don't know, whether the follow through business will come. Innovation does not necessarily always get all the money when they are spending, especially if the situation is tight in terms of the overall business conditions, the economic conditions. So it has its own hurdles and it has its own challenges. There are projects which have started and then stalled, and then budget is not there. They've not got the next investment. All these typical stories I have in my portfolio. But
so these 25 companies, Dave, your role, is it Indian companies? You'll get them European entry, or is it? Are you a non-exec director on the board?
No, it can be any of.
You have them just European entry into using your other
Yeah.
experiences about manufacturing, shop floor, this and that.
So my value that I can bring, because I've spent my whole career in generating business, right? So I've been a sales guy, I've been a business development guy. International business development is what I've done. So I'm just using that experience and bringing it to my partner companies. So essentially, because I have a footprint in Europe, I've got certain amount of network, because I understand the ways business happens. Not that I'm an expert on every country or every area, but at least I have a certain level of experience, right? So whatever I can bring to the relationship, I try to add value by helping them to grow into Europe. The challenge which I usually face is that most of these companies, they're evaluating, so they are not doing only for Europe. They're typically, most companies start with the US first, because US is a bigger market. You know,
Everyone wants to do US, and because everyone wants to do US, most of them are not successful.
I don't know about that, but the thing is, US probably is the first go-to market for most of these companies. Europe,
Exactly. So I've got this pain point. This pain point. I see startups in the UK, and their pitch usually is that, okay, we'll do a bit in the UK. We'll not become market leader. We'll not even be in the top 10. We'll do a bit. We'll show some proof of concept. And then we are going to the US. I'm like, यार तुमने अपनी मार्केट, होम मार्केट में तो तुम एस्टैब्लिश अपने आप को अगर नहीं कर पा रहे हो, यूएस में कहाँ से completely new market, and in healthcare completely new revenue model, etc. क्यों करोगे? And most importantly, सिर्फ यूके की नहीं, पूरे यूरोप की, पूरे एशिया की सारी कंपनीज के लिए टॉप चॉइस तो यूएस में ही हम करेंगे, है ना? तो तुम अब उन सबसे compete करोगे, यहाँ की 10 कंपनीज यूके में तो compete कर लो पहले.
Very, very true. Very true.
I mean, if any startup entrepreneur or wannabe entrepreneur is watching, I'll give you. Obviously, every investor is different, but I'll tell you this is a pure reject for me after the first, unless there's a reason why that person is going into the US. कि US में ये चले.
I no, but I work a lot with non-European companies, right? Because my value add is that I will help you to expand into Europe, right? And the main markets that I focus is UK, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, which is the German-speaking belt, and the Nordics. Nordics, mainly Sweden, is where my strength is. So that's where my experience and contacts are the strongest, right? My network is the strongest. But typically, companies which are outside Europe, right? And so I'm talking about like 70-80% of the companies are from India. I've got some American clients. I've got some American companies who want to expand into Europe. They are quite good companies to work with, because they pay quite nicely in terms of the engagement model, etc. I've got some Middle Eastern companies. They are reaching out. That I talked to you about Vietnam, for example. That's a country which is suddenly in the last 3 to 6 months, there are a couple of companies which have reached out to me, which I don't know why it is happening or how it is happening. I've got something going on with South Korea, which is I believe they are pretty very, very strong in certain technologies, and they also struggle with the cultural alignment part of it. So if you can help them, they will be very, very happy to work with you. So all these companies, they also have a choice of looking at US versus Europe, right? So they, and this has been my situation even in my corporate experience, where if you are looking at a global business, typically Europe will get less importance compared to US as a market. And when you're asking for marketing budget, where you're asking for, it's like you get a little bit of step treatment because of the fact that it's more difficult to sell in Europe because of the varied
100 languages
culturally. But the thing is, it does not necessarily apply for companies which are like just just growing, right? So I don't expect them to be in every country in Europe, right? I would be happy if they can just penetrate the German market and establish themselves
One at a
one
time.
at a time, right?
Yes.
So, but
So you can start with the dark and then do a thing, and then you leave the
Yeah.
French part of Switzerland and
Yeah.
France and
Yeah.
Belgium, and that part maybe for later.
Yeah.
Once you've established.
Yeah. And there are a lot of advantages of Europe, right? So Europe's stickiness is more, margins are better. I mean, there are a lot of very, very strong positives, but then all that matters only when you break in, right? If you're not able to break in, then
Yes.
then it doesn't matter.
But once you break in, I'll add from what I was saying earlier. You can sell it to them.
Yeah.
Is see all the European companies are trying to break into the US, so you take their spot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's quite exciting. So coming back to my situation currently, so I work in technologies with companies that are very exciting. I see the potential. It's not easy, starting new business for a company which has no presence in Europe, no delivery in Europe is never easy. So it all goes down to, developing the relationship, getting them to experience that it can be delivered successfully, go through the grind of step by step, increasing the interaction level, project size level. So it's been interesting. I mean, I've enjoyed my journey so far in terms of the content of work. COVID was a little bit, under the belly, because when I just started the company and COVID hit, and 2 years kind of out, absolutely.
So how many companies do you have on your?
In all, I have had about 16 or 17 companies which have worked with me in different.
How many currently?
Currently about 7, 8. So,
okay.
So it's and the numbers are quite good. There are few in the offing, but I'm kind of limited by how much I can handle right now. So I'm looking at partnerships, expanding get similar profile partners who can then take on some more. So demand wise, I'm quite well placed. Execution wise, I still need to improve because I get limited by how much I can do. I'm working on, systemization. So I'm going to invest in more proper systems to improve the productivity of how I do things in terms of new business lead management, all the CRM stuff, the good things that we talk about.
But for the startup founders watching this episode, what would be your top 2 or 3, in summary, the skills you would bring to their table, how you can help them? I know you've mentioned a few, but what's your biggest sales pitch in, what's it called? Elevator pitch, or is there a new fancy word for it?
Yeah, I know we can stay with the elevator. I don't know if there are better elevators now compared to what we had in those days.
Yes, उसमें बहुत time लगता था ना वो जाके.
I know, but I have one company that I work with. So they work with Otis. And they have all their elevators are IoT enabled. So you can remotely, control all their deployments of the lifts in different buildings and stuff like that.
So anyone can hack it. Anyone can hack it. And there will be a new diehard.
Even diehard. Even lifts are becoming quite smart. So that's also there. But anyway, talking about
30-second elevator pitch.
So any company which has got a strong offering where they believe that they can stand out amidst competition in some way or form, either through what they have created, how they deliver, what kind of value they bring to the segment they are offering. I think you need to be good in what you do. Average is not good enough when you're starting at this stage. I'm looking at the European market. So once you feel that you're mature enough in terms of your product and solution is mature enough to come to Europe, so maybe you should have tried and tested it out in a more less demanding markets to begin with. And once you feel that you are at that stage, you need to. I can help in creating. So typically, I look at 12 to 24 months engagement. And my aim is to get them enough business for them to set up an office in Europe, so that they have got enough, enough critical business to justify either having a 1-person team or a small team, or so that they can start saying that they have now got a presence in Europe. So initially, I work as their European office. I work as the European advisor, and then help them to, because the cost of engaging global tech catalysts is just a fraction of what they would incur otherwise if they have a dedicated person or a dedicated operation. So it just makes it a little bit more bearable from there. But then at the same time, you don't have a dedicated full-time guy for running around. So you obviously get a part of what how much involvement I can offer. So it's not just me. I have a research team. I have a back-end team which does the groundwork activities also. So I would typically start with where you are really strong. I would typically look at also where it matches with my network. So because trust is very, very important. So what I offer and what I can do is, because of my relationship with the clients, they will at least open up a conversation. Whether they buy from you or not depends on so many other factors. But at least if they are willing to talk to you and get to know you, I think that's a very, very good starting point. And typically what I aim at is that if I can have, like, say 20, if I'm a company which is doing something in whatever field, if I have a pipeline over 20, 25 companies in Europe who know who we are, who have got some potential, they may not be ready to give you business today. But if I have relationship with 25 odd companies to start with in the first 12 months, that can very much, give you the returns in the next year. Or, in some cases it happens very, very quickly, but you have to be patient. You can't, I will not say that you can expect to get an order in 6 months. That's not realistic expectation, because it takes time for them to even get to know you, for you to get to know them. Then the opportunity has to be right, timing has to be right, etc., etc. So it's like
which sectors, which type of companies?
So manufacturing. So like when I say manufacturing, so auto, aero, industrial. Obviously these are all very similar kind of characteristics. Even the technologies that go into it has a huge overlap between these. Because I have worked with fintech companies lately, so you'll be surprised. So fintech is a sector where I have got a lot of work going on right now. Naturally, again, being UK, being strong in BFSI sector, obviously you get a lot of companies wanting to look at that. Medical devices, I think it's a very, very good area where UK is strong. Plus, even Europe is quite strong. It has got it's a sector which will continue to grow, and it has got a lot more money. People are willing to spend on technology. It's a good sector to look at. So I would even look at medical. I've also worked in edutech. There were some companies which were more into the edutech sector. I've had some. I've even worked in esports. Gaming. So there were some companies which were in the gaming side, which is. I worked in, like I talked about, drone technologies, so which is kind of, you can club it with aerospace to some extent. So I worked in those areas. So because I'm kind of, I cannot be too strict about the verticalization of my offering, because it also is driven by which company wants to do what, right?
And how strictly do you evaluate when you're being selective about the companies?
So I look at,
a company might think that, Dev, you can help them.
Yeah.
But how selective are you that, can I really help them? How much introspection can you do? And what's your end goal in doing that?
Yeah. So for me, if I do not work with company who has inherent strength, I will not succeed. Very, very clear. So there are two important things which. So one is that if I do not work with companies who are really good, I will not get the business. The second is, if I screw up the delivery, for example, if I screw up the delivery, then it will actually have a negative impact on my relationship with my clients, with my end customers, usually so many times I take different technologies to the same company because of my relationship. So because the head of R&D, or the CIO, or the head of IT, for example. So they are willing. They are like people who trust you, who know you for the last 15, 20 years. I cannot afford to, shortchange them in their expectations of what I'm delivering. Yeah. So I'm very, very careful on that front. So,
and I think that's a very important point, especially for people who open gates for others.
Yeah.
And whether it's investors, whether it's advisors, like if I can open a gate to a company, then I'm very, very strict on whose gate or which company's gate do I open. Because a lot of companies, even for me, I've got relationships in healthcare, in the NHS, and in different trusts and CCGs and whatever, they keep changing names. But if I can't take a company to them, because I know that these guys are not going to like it. Right? Now, I could be wrong. There's always a type 1 and type 2 error. But you have to be protective about your own reputation in the long term.
Yeah. More than that, I look at myself as the end client's representative also, right?
Yes.
If I do a quick sale and run away, I don't think I can survive in this business.
Yes.
So, particularly in Europe, because it's still very relationship oriented. Europe.
No, absolutely. In fact, I think you put it so beautifully that even though they're not paying you, but you're representing them also, and being a door opener for all these companies, you have to make sure that the guys you're opening the door to don't shut the door on you for any future companies.
Absolutely, and you'll be surprised. I'll tell you, I've got two very positive things to share. One is that a lot of my end clients, and I'm talking about clients whom I may have interacted 20 years ago, for example, because of the way the interactions have been in the past and the way they see me as someone who is a credible person bringing in or asking for a business discussion. That is very, very, and I sometimes I feel surprised that people with whom I may have interacted on some engagement 10 years ago, and then you reach out to them out of the blue, and it's very, very quickly they come back to you, and you have your pleasantries, you exchange about how things are today, etc., and they are genuinely willing to. If they don't have something very relevant, they will tell you as like a true professional manner, and I value that a lot, and it's very interesting to see how the years and years of interaction ultimately benefits you in the long run, provided I don't take advantage of them. And I am very, very strict about. I'd never try to do anything or try to sell anything to them which I feel is not going to add value to them. So I act as a gatekeeper myself for that, and that helps in strengthening that relationship more and more and more. And that has probably been one of my strong points. And what has happened over the years is that people who were like department heads and all, they're all right now at the CXO levels in different companies. In fact, now this different problem is coming that they are retiring now. So I have to work very quickly in figuring out, to get to know the next level of
next rung. Getting to the next rung.
Yeah.
Getting to the next rung is their plan. But Dave, that was an excellent elevator pitch. It was probably like what was that movie 10 years ago, Elevator, which was stuck and something. But yeah, I think you put a lot of things in a very succinct and beautiful way. Of course, people need to understand what it takes to have an intermediary who's effectively your representative in a different country, for almost like a freelancer in a way, until they can set up their office.
Yeah.
So Dave, I think this is the best segue to go into the most exciting part of our conversation. And I'll give you 1 minute to get your guitar.
Yeah.
And we will get there very soon.
Yeah. I've got my guitar. Nearby.
Have you already?
Yes.
So with Global Tech Catalyst, Dev, you've been doing all this interesting stuff from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. What happens after that when the sun sets?
So when the sun sets, a different persona emerges, and I transform into a singer-songwriter, musician, busker. It's basically following my passion of music, which I have nurtured it and kept it alive over the last. I mean, since I was in college.
Which you were telling us about your IIM music band, Contraband.
That's right. So my first band was in my engineering days. So we set up the first band, and that's when I actually learned. So I had a senior who was from Meghalaya or Assam, one of the northeastern states, and he taught me a lot when I was in engineering. And those days we didn't have there were no aids available. It was even difficult to find the books. We couldn't even find the lyrics of songs, right? So it was so difficult. So you would have to actually, and those days we had tapes. We didn't even have digital. So you'd actually rewind tapes some millions of times to even figure out what the person is singing. So from those days onwards, where we set up so I had a band in college. Then when I moved to Jamshedpur, was with Tatas, I actually set up a band in Jamshedpur, which won some awards as the best band in all of Jamshedpur, and in all these inter-company festivals and stuff like that. Then went to IIM. Luckily, I thought initially that I will not have the time to do any music, but after a couple of terms, when you figured out where you stand in the patch, then the music came alive, and then we had some amazing talent from some of the other batchmates who were the bass guitarists. Sharma, we talked about some of them. So we had a fantastic lead guitarist, Santi, who's based in Chennai. Suku, who is a bass guitarist. He was in Japan. He's just come back to India after finishing a stint in Japan. Venki, who was the drummer, he's based in Bombay. He runs India Infoline. So all these, so we had an amazing time when it came to obviously the pressure of exams used to be there. So obviously there used to be times in IIM when it used to be absolutely dry. There would be no music. And then the moment the exams are over, suddenly everything comes alive, And then we would be practicing in in fact in the main college building we had a room where the music instruments were stored, all the drums and guitars and stuff like that. And we would practice. We'd take it out after dinner and we would set it up over there. And then half of the hostel folks will come over there. Everybody will sit there and we would have a great time. So we used
where was this room? I don't think a decade later when I was there at IMB, I don't think there was any room with musical instruments and drums.
No, so it was one of these storeroom kind of places in the main foyer of the main building where we used to have the classes.
Okay.
So
they probably had it, but no one was enthusiastic enough in our batch to pick it up.
I don't know what the music scene is now, but I'm sure there are a lot of guys who play good music and you have a lot of talent coming every batch in every batch.
But can I rewind a little bit? Because I'm very curious. You mentioned a guy from Meghalaya who, do you remember his name or anything?
It's been a long time. No, I don't, frankly.
The reason I mention it is because during my school days, there was this guy, he was in our school band.
Yeah.
And he's currently the Chief Minister of Meghalaya.
Oh, is it?
Had P.A. Sangma was the Chief Minister, and now Conrad Sangma is the Chief Minister of Meghalaya. But he was part of our school rock band, and very good at music.
Really? Yeah. I don't remember his name.
They think that chief minister hai, to matlab, he used to be in a rock band once upon a time in the 90s.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
And he was from Meghalaya. So this is like,
maybe.
how many people do I know from Meghalaya? I don't.
I think Northeast has had the tradition of a lot of guitarists used to come from the Northeast. I don't know what the reason was, because either there were like a lot of people playing Western music there.
Yes.
So it was quite popular. So,
in fact, if I extend that, one of our recent guests, who's from IIM Calcutta and maybe converging into, he's the one who told us recently that Tata Motors is the revenue king of Tatas. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Really?
And he used to be a national level badminton player, had a bit of an injury, and then decided to do the CAT and got into IIM Calcutta.
Yeah.
So, Northeast is not just music. In fact,
also.
Well, he's technically not Northeast because he grew up in Delhi, but one part of his bloodline, half of his bloodline is from Manipur.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So you have some amazing talent coming from there.
So this whole his whole graduation IIM days, how has it culminated in your post sunset career?
So like I said, I made conscious effort to keep playing, and I kept the. I think it's basically because I am very, very musically inclined. Even though I'm not very good, I'm still, I've never had any formal training. When I was growing up, I didn't have, any access to any teachers, or it was mostly self-taught.
Right.
And
which is like Kishore Kumar is apparently a self-taught singer.
Yeah, but that's not the right comparison with me. But yeah, I mean, if that part matches, I'll be happy to accept that. So it's like because it gave me pleasure to play and learn, and I kept working on it. And then in Chennai, so in Delhi, I used to play occasionally, not so often when I was working in Delhi. Chennai, because Santi, my lead guitarist, he was based in Chennai, so we had opportunity to play together. We would go to Cafe Coffee Day, and we would sit there and have a gig, or we would go and play in some opportunities here and there. So we continued to do that whenever we got an opportunity. There was some. So Chennai was not bad actually from a music point of view. They had few places where you could go and gig, once a month or something like that, which was quite nice actually. And I used to enjoy in general the music scene in Chennai. Bangalore, of course, Bombay used to be the best when it came to Western music, but we were not in those cities, so we did whatever best we could, or I could, during that time. And then I relocated to Europe, right? So I moved to Germany. That's when I actually, I think, started becoming more serious about learning. And I remember I had an Italian teacher, so I joined one of these evening classes when I was in Germany. And he was like, so I was trying to learn the basics, right? I didn't have very strong foundation in music theory and all that. And he, I think, made a huge impact on the way I looked at myself from a music point of view. And he encouraged me to not to be scared of, writing your own stuff, creating your own music. And he helped, I think, and he was like an oldish gentleman, Italian guy living in Germany, who was like a guitar teacher that time. And he would, help me out with if I'm not able to understand something or compose something and all. And I think that was probably a big, big impact and a big influencer in my musical journey. And then that's when I started writing. and experimenting with music, experimenting with my playing, even though my techniques are not very sophisticated by any standard, or not technically great, but I was not scared of trying it out. And then I was lucky to move to UK, which is I'm so thankful that I actually got an opportunity to move to, and in UK, in London, which is, I would say, is one of the best places for musicians to do whatever they want to do. I mean, here, the respect for any upcoming musician, they welcome people trying out new stuff. Every place has got an opportunity to go and perform, do gigs, do open mics. Music is part of the culture here. And I think that obviously, gave me more opportunities. I started interacting with more people who were in the music circuit. I kind of took the initiative of forming a band in my neighborhood. So I actually have a band, and that continues to be, I retained the name Contraband for our band. So I have a 3-member band right now. We are looking for a bass guitarist. And for now, it's like I am practically every week I do a gig somewhere in London. So I would go for open mics or go for any opportunity, so wherever we get, either we get invited, some of them are, ticketed events. Many of them are just an opportunity to go and play, 3 songs of your choice. And then you slowly people start noticing you, and people start reaching out to you, and you get more and more gigs. So, I've been invited for it's like a festival in Wales. They're saying, are you interested in playing there? I've got another mail saying that, we have a festival coming up in Basel in Switzerland. Are you? So it just, once you are in that circuit, you start getting some of these invitations.
Do they pay money for you to play, or
some places do? So some places, like I said, but the thing is, because there is an agent involved, they take most of the money. So right now, and they know where we are coming from, right? Because we are looking for establishing our identity. So we are actually more than happy to play for free, because as long as you give us a stage and you give us so I have done some gigs in central London in places like Shoreditch, for example. So they do the promotion, they run the ad campaign, they do the ticketing, they do all that. And then you get, based on how much ticket you sell, you get a percentage commission linked to that. So the good news is that
what's the percentage, Dev? I'm very curious.
It can vary from 20 to 80% of the tickets.
Wow, 80% commission.
Yeah, it depends on who you are, right? So,
right.
If the moment you start drawing, because the thing is, these venues make a lot of money by selling drinks and selling food and stuff like that. So they want people to come and attend these shows, right?
I'm slightly going on a tangent, as usual.
Yeah.
But recently there's this big thing about Ticketmaster having a monopoly position.
Yeah.
That is so true now that you think about it. Yeah. I'm so glad that people in the power and in that they finally woken up.
Yeah.
That tickets are being priced atrociously, which doesn't work for the fans, and neither does it work for the performers.
Yeah.
Nor does it work for the agents, because the agents also can't get commission, but someone else is gouging the price and all that. But coming back,
that of course, you have to keep it in check. Otherwise, the gray market, black market, whatever you call it, they will start exploiting the situation.
But coming back, so these two-headed markets like Ticketmaster, isn't there like a market replacing the agents already?
There are lots of online companies. These are you can't call them agents, but these are companies who, there is an UK open mic where you can become a member. You sign up, and they will invite you. They will start, giving you opportunities to perform. They don't necessarily charge you anything for them. I think they make more money by the community that they have, and then they probably sell through advertisements and stuff like that on there.
I mean, I'm thinking of has no startup. I'm pretty sure there are. I don't work in this sector, but I'm pretty sure there are at least 10 startups trying to sell themselves as we are the Uber of the music industry.
Yeah.
We are the Airbnb of the music industry.
Yeah. So like this UK open mic I'm talking about. So they are basically, you can sign up as a musician, and they have events all over UK, and they will invite you based on your profile, style of music, etc. Right. And then because they are doing an event, they obviously get paid by wherever the event is happening. So it may not be ticketed. So ideally, you need to be in gigs which are ticketed. Obviously, then you get a part of the ticket sales revenue that comes. But that's a slow progression, and you have to. I mean, as you become more, and the irony in music and in most creative industries that it's like the switch from nobody to somebody can happen very quickly.
Yes.
I mean, you just need something like one big hit and then you are in a different world completely. It's like that. But then like Dua
Lipa and the Elton John.
So I have played in places where Dua Lipa plays. So I have in the venue where she had only 13 people in the audience. And this was just 3 years ago, not too long.
Yes. Yes, but that changed about a year ago.
Yeah,
something like
she had one hit. She had one hit, and it completely transformed. And she headlined Glastonbury, right? So she was on one of the days she was headlining Glastonbury, which is like a dream of any musician to headline.
And right now she's and see, I'm not closely following the UK or global music scene as much as you, but I think she is probably one of the top UK musicians, not too far off from Ed Sheeran or Harry Styles.
Not in the same league as Ed Sheeran from a money point of view, but she's famous. She's famous. She's very famous.
Adele, Harry Styles.
They are in a different league. I think you can't compare Dua Lipa in that league. But she's a well-known artist. She's a well-known artist.
Yes.
So, I mean, So
you played with Dua Lipa. Have you?
No, I haven't. No. Haven't played with Dua Lipa.
In the same venue.
Yeah, where she has performed. Where she has she talks about where she used to hardly have anybody, coming to her gigs. To today, there are, I don't know, Glastonbury had 100,000 people, 200,000 people watching her live. I mean, or live. I'm talking about on stage. Forget the television audience number of people who are watching. I mean,
the next you're going to tell us कि मैं मतलब Ed Sheeran के साथ भी बजा चुका हूँ and all that.
So that's again the beauty of London, right? So because a lot of these musicians, the so-called, superstars, rock stars, whatever, they are all. I mean, they obviously, if they live in and around, you will have common links. Either they have been there, they played there. So you go to a pub, you're talking to the bartender, and then the bartender, like if I'm going there as with my guitar or something, and then so they like. In one of the central London pubs, that he started saying, "Oh, do you know so and so? This guy. There's a guy called Jake Bargam, and he I think didn't get the Grammys, but he was a Brit Awards winner. So he comes to that pub, and then so the bartender obviously knew that. I mean, he knew about Jake Bargam, so he was asking, "Do you know? Do you want to meet him?" It's like that. So it's like you're like 1 degree apart or 2 degrees apart from some of these big guys who are, one of the places where I go for open mics. So she, the bass guitarist of Iron Maiden. So Iron Maiden was like one of the big rock bands of the 70s and 80s, right? So in fact, they had a show in O2 just about 3 months ago. So she, the person who organizes that event, and I've been playing in a venue for last 5 years now. So she knows me very well. And so she used to be a very, very close friend of the bass guitarist of Iron Maiden. So she actually got invited to the backstage and just spent that. And this is like someone who's like, who's like a super. I mean, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple. These are like super bands, right? They are not like
definitely of our day and age. I don't know any youngsters know.
Youngsters may not know much about them, but the thing is, it's like you're connected to people like them. Only one degree of separation, right? Which is impossible in India. I can't even imagine having access to any of these guys. Like I know somebody who actually tunes the guitar for Eric Clapton, for example. It's I mean, for me, getting an opportunity to interact with Eric Clapton.
Have you got your guitar tuned by the same person?
No. These guys are. I mean, even a guitar tuner is someone very, very special.
So Dev, I'm curious. You stay in Wimbledon.
Yeah,
you're not a tennis player. You should be in Hampstead or Notting Hill or somewhere in that side of London.
I mean,
Wimbledon में थोड़ी ना music career बनता है.
No, but where I live, a lot of the established rock stars, right? So Rod Stewart, David Gilmour, Eric Clapton. I mean, the list is. I mean, you can think of many names. This Rolling Stones guy, Mick Jagger. All these guys, they've got like estates which are more or less in Surrey area, because so they are.
बाद में खरीदा होगा अमीर बनने के बाद.
Yeah. I'm talking obviously.
होने के बाद. Not. I don't think they're from there.
Yeah, but all of them have settled there, right? So they're all. Yeah. So the thing is, I am actually literally starting from scratch as a profession at the age when most people tend to retire. So I'm actually starting my career now as a musician, like where I'm working hard. I'm actually going through the grind of playing in bars, playing on the street, playing which is a lot of people find it very, very strange as to why I'm doing it. But the thing is, I personally enjoy and I would like to take it to a level where I can be proud of what I've achieved or what I've created. So, like I said, I have a band which we play together when we can, because all of them are like one of my lead guitarist. He's a pilot actually with EasyJet. So again, our calendars have to match for us to play together. My drummer, he's an architect, so he's again, very busy during the day. Only sometimes he can afford to, we get together and go for rehearsals and stuff like that. So a lot of my current performances as a soloist. And we have recently managed to get one song recorded. So we have that song should go on a release. We are hoping to launch it in September. I was thinking of doing it by end of August, but it looks like it. We have to delay it a bit because the video is still not done. And this will be our first studio recorded single, which is getting released. And then we got.
Basically, so you're singing, Dev. You're singing.
So I'm the singer songwriter. I'm the lead guitarist obviously has his part in the actual recording. So but when I sing, it's just me, my guitar, and vocals. That's it. So I can give a preview of that for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. I've been waiting for this for the whole episode.
So I can do a quick
sneak preview. Before
that.
Yeah.
And
for any viewers watching it, they can claim when this becomes a Billboard 100 or whatever. I don't know if Billboard 100 is still running, but back in our day,
it's still there.
100 used to be that.
UK top 40 is what we aspire for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, once you get into that, and nowadays I think Spotify top list and recommended list and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Once they get into that, our viewers can say they heard the sneak preview before your single was released.
Yeah. So even though it's good to have some ambitions of being listed on the top of the charts and all, but ultimately a lot of us do it because we want to, one is capture or create and capture what we have got to share, right? So as musicians, often what we create it comes a lot from the heart, right? So we are not necessarily like Simon Cowell, where you're actually creating music to sell, right? So we are not necessarily in that category, but we would of course love it if it does well and generates money at the same time.
Fingers crossed, and we will make sure that all our viewers hear your single. So guitar nikalo aur baja ke dikhao. So
Okay, I'll do a quick.
While you're doing it for Viks, I'm going to mention this because Viks is here now.
Yeah.
When we started this channel,
Yeah,
it was also like a pure passion. Kiya karte hain. We'll highlight the achievements of IIM alumni.
yeah,
7 months, and I'm saying this on record.
yeah.
7 months, we reached 800 subscribers.
Wow.
In our 8th month,
Yeah,
we crossed double of that.
yeah,
And in the 9th month, which has just started,
yeah.
let's see what the future beholds.
Absolutely. Somebody was asking, so I was talking to some people, and they were asking, is our channel restricted only to the alumni, or people can, non-alumni can also see it?
Anyone can see it. In fact, the more non-alumni see it, because that's the bulk of the population. We're not saying you have to be an IIM alumni to see it.
Okay, excellent.
So far, and I say so far with a bold and underline, is we are having guests who are IIM alumni.
Okay.
But at some point, if we have interesting people who may not be alumni, but the same credentials, then we want to showcase them also.
Yeah. Excellent. So because there were some people, they were like getting interested in, we would like to also, listen to it. And I said,
Dave, before you start, what's this guitar brand? Or maybe we can have a side conversation.
This is called Taka Mini.
Is that the best brand?
No.
Now?
So I have not yet reached a level where I would buy really expensive stuff. I mean, this is not cheap.
Yeah.
Let me say that. So this guitar, this brand is Bon Jovi's favorite brand. So Bon Jovi plays with this guitar. But
when you say it's not cheap, what does it mean? Is it like 200 pounds?
No.
1,000 pounds?
This is 15 years ago, I spent 600 a year.
But abhi kya? What's
it'll be 1,000 plus. 1,000 plus.
Wow.
So 1,000 plus, which is not So it's not what a professional guitarist would. So professional guitarists would obviously play on more expensive guitars. But this is I mean, I am at a stage where I may have to think of upgrading. But then I have got
some reason I was asking is because my daughter is learning the guitar, and when you were saying that you're looking for a bass guitarist while she's learning lead guitar, but she might, if you don't find someone in the next 5 or 10 years, she might be able to join.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm thinking how expensive it might be.
So I've got
her guitaring.
So I must also mention that I'm also a guitar teacher. So I also teach music now. So I've got about half a dozen students.
Mil gaya, main tuition teacher mil gaya.
So it's a lot of students. So I would normally recommend a starting guitar between 300 to 500. So you can get it for 100 pounds also. But then it will probably last for a year or two.
हमारा बहुत सस्ता है. Yeah. No, हमारा बहुत सस्ता है, but we'll take this offline. Yeah. I really am waiting for your song.
Okay.
Wow, that first string, excited.
I don't know how the reception is on the other side. I hope it's clear. But so this is the first song that I wrote. This is a song called "Looking for an Angel," and this song I was inspired to write when I had moved to Germany, and I remember I used to go to work in the morning, by subway, by the local train, and used to have that strange feeling of being in a strange, country where you are amidst, the place used to be crowded, the stations and all used to be crowded, but I mean, nobody knew who you are, nobody cared who you are, and then you're in one corner of the world where not many people know you in any case, right? So it was a phase when you start questioning as to what your identity is, who why you are where you are, kind of. So and then that kind of, so I didn't write it immediately when I was going through this phase, but when I learned how to play, I wanted to capture that emotion and that feeling, and then wrote this song, which was more about, I call it hope, which can sometimes be quite elusive at times. And it's basically all of us, have phases in our life, in our career, where you look up, or we're looking for an external help, external support, like an angel to guide you through that phase. So that's what this song is all about. So hopefully you guys will like it. Let me know if it is clear, audible, right? I'm staring through the window. I'm looking at the street. I don't know where I'm going. I just know where I've been. I'm looking for an angel, lead me on from. And eyes get strained and tired. Find a world that there. I walk into the subway, cold breaths in the air, and no one seemed to care for other. I'm not there. And then I hear the music rip through subway, an old man playing a medley, making me want someone. I don't know what I want. And must I just go on? And now I'm old and wiser, not sure if I'll find it's tears and smiles around here. It's knocking from door to door. I'm still looking for an angel, we are. And eyes get straight and tall. I find no one out there. It's time to go on and on. And life will go on and on. It's time to go on and on. And we must go on and on. And I will go on and on. And oh, I can't hear you. Was it audible?
Yes, it was audible, and maybe I wasn't. So, I mean, it was so lovely. I don't have words to say. And
That's very kind of you to say.
That's why I was on mute. I mean, I'm just thinking of genres, and I thought, from my very basic music sense, is this cut across a couple of genres. So how do you define this? So
it's a blend of So I call it acoustic rock, but it's not pure rock. So it has elements of folk in it. It has elements of ballad in it. So technically, I have not written. So I normally, when I write, I don't strictly follow the structure of a particular genre.
Yes.
So the way I write is I actually start with the feeling that's the center stage of what I'm trying to say, and then layer it with the music and the words, which basically bring out that feeling. And it depends on how it shapes up. So there are some songs which are like what we call a very high beats per minute. It's like a fast song, which could, in terms of the essence, could be a serious topic, but it actually needed a high tempo to bring out the emotions, for example. So it's like sometimes it's good not to look at the rules too much, right? So you actually go with what you
are there for guidance, but not to be followed.
Yeah. So it's again, there are some singer-songwriters which follow, which they do something similar to what I'm saying. Some write, they actually have the music first and then they write the lyrics. There are different ways in which. So I'm part of. There is a academy called the Songwriters Academy in London. It's an international body, and it's run by people who have they have written songs for Grammy Award winners and the who's who of the music world. So they are basically the ones who kind of teach and talk in that. So I'm part of.
So you're writing songs as part of the
So it's a songwriters community basically, and it's led by a guy called Martin Sutton, who's based in London, but he has written for Westlife, Boyzone. He's written for some of the some of the big guys. He's been associated with Michael Jackson in some ways. Some parts where he is. He's worked. He's got like 25 platinum albums, platinum songs. So he's like a big dog when it comes to songwriting. So he runs this academy, and he has. So I've had interactions with the Oscar winner. She's based in Nashville, so she's a singer-songwriter for that. So you have access to a lot of people. There are a lot of people from LA who come for that course. They come to teach you how to write, basically. So,
but you're mentioning LA and Viks is here.
Yeah.
Viks, what is the kind of California music scene? Because Dave was mentioning he's got a lot of folk influences and some rock influences. And from what little bit of music I know, I think California is folk and rock and a few other
everything.
Missionary.
Everything. Yeah. California is like, so I would
mean California music influences are folk music and
no, it's everything.
A bit of rock music, and then everything else is the masala.
If you go to San Francisco and what's that place where Hendrix used to be there, Janis Joplin used to be there, legends of music. So everything emerged from places like so.
Yeah.
I mean, right now you have all these, I don't know, Hot Chili Peppers, your Green Day. I mean, they are all based out of California, and I mean, I adore many of these, but a lot of them are punk rock. They are into heavy rock. The likes of I think even Doors, Jim Morrison was also there. I mean, I think Viks will probably. I don't know if you're into music, Viks, or not.
I'm like normally into music, which is like go to YouTube, say top songs, and listen to the top songs. Not like your level of music, but it's so wonderful to see someone with such high academic credentials, industry credentials, and such a developed.
So when I did my busking, I busk. The busk is basically you stand on the road and you play, and people pay you some money for playing, right?
Yeah.
So
you've done that.
I do that. Yeah. I'm.
You still do that? Harper, which station?
So I played in Clapham, I played in Wimbledon, I played in Kingston, I played in Guildford. In fact, I was supposed to play in South Bank in Waterloo on Sunday, which didn't work out. So. Who?
Do you know this girl called Ali Sherlock?
Like,
Ali Sherlock.
are you talking about this girl who plays?
Achha,
Well, yeah. So her
who works in Dublin.
what's her full name? Her full name is something else, right? Ali. Yeah. I listen to her quite a lot. Yeah.
Ali Sherlock.
She's very. I mean, she has come on television and all that. She's a big. She's like one of the well-known buskers in the world. Yeah. Maximum? I
What's
won.
the maximum you have earned in a day? Busking.
I think 17 pounds.
Yes,
so what I've done so far, whatever I earn in busking, I keep it in a separate jar. And someday I will probably look back and say that, this has helped. So the winner of X Factor, the guy who, I'm forgetting his name, the guy who sings very sad songs. What's his name? I'm completely missing his. So he disguised himself and he played in London. He earned about 34 pounds.
Yes. Nobody gave him a...
That's how the X Factor winner. He earned 34 pounds while busking.
Yeah.
I am nobody and I earned 17. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Yes. And with that thought, and with that laughter, we have to bring this episode.
I mean, I'm going to say this one last time. Again, I'm mentioning Ed Sheeran again.
Yeah.
Is from what I know is Ed Sheeran also started busking.
So Ed Sheeran is one of my inspirations because he has his philosophy is you have to just keep playing,
do it
everywhere. So he used to play till late night. And then he would stay up till the circle line starts. So I think 4 o'clock or 4:30 circle line starts. And then he would get onto circle line and then he would sleep on the circle line. That is his story. So
your story is just do it. Experience story is just do it. And that's why you've got the Nike logo right on your t-shirt as I see. Lovely talking to you.
Same.
It is like, it's been a pleasure. I can go on for like 2, 3, 4 hours. Our channel is all about bringing IIM alumni in front of the people, aspirants, current MBAs, recent alumni, and or people or older alumni like us, like know us and be part of our living room, because that's what IIM Ke Baad is all about, is to hear our stories, hear our guest stories. And it was a lovely story, Dev. I'm sure it will continue. And we are going to buy your single. So once you release it, we will attach it to the video.
I will be grateful.
Or somewhere where it's relevant.
Very grateful. And thanks a lot for having me. I think for me, it was like playing your whole life career. Because I have not done this ever.
Yes.
So this is like probably the first time when you really look back right from the beginning till where you are. So a lot of it, I don't know, I must have rambled quite a lot because it was too spontaneous for me to, craft any specific answers, but I really enjoyed it. And I think both of you have really made it so much easier and so much, comfortable for me to just open up the way I would do it in a more closed forum. I mean, this is going to go out to all the alumni, or the audience is much wider, but I really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dev. And see, 30 years, illustrious career at the top level. I'm sure people will enjoy it.
I hope
we'll probably have to split it out into 2 episodes. That's what I recommend.
Just compress it. I think that keep it short and sweet. So be generous with the editing.
We'll do that. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. See you.